Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 12th of May. Today, the Prime Minister is at loggerheads with his own party after U-turning on the government's pledge to scrap 4,000 EU laws still on UK statute books. Rail workers don't seem to be running out of steam as the strikes continue across the country's railways.
The UK has supplied Ukraine with long-range Storm Shadow cruise missiles. What are these weapons and what does this mean for the war? And as the Bank of England raises interest rates for the 12th time in a row, we'll bring you the latest GDP figures just after 7 o'clock and reveal what it means for the pound in your pocket.
And there's still time to have your say in this year's Trick Awards. We're up for Multi-Channel News Programme of the Year.
And our very own Stephen Dixon is nominated for Best News Presenter, so do cast your vote using the QR code on this screen now, or you can also go to trick.org.uk and get a wiggle on because votes close at 5 p.m. today.
I'm Stephen Dixon.
And you're very good. I'm Eddie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News. So if you're doing anything today, make your way to the Trick website, please, before 5 o'clock.
I feel very guilty now because I didn't say it and you're very good.
Well, I'm not up for an award, darling, and you are.
This is
so vote for Stephen Dixon. He's very good at what he does, and he's very humble. And he wouldn't ask for it himself.
No, well, never mind. Anyway, look.
Look, he's uncomfortable.
I am uncomfortable with it. I am.
But he deserves it, and I know that you agree with me.
Do you know what? There's some things that'll get you talking this morning. We're going to talk about Eurovision. What makes a good Eurovision song today? Because it's Eurovision tomorrow, so that's worth talking about. Also, and I'm not going to go into details. If you're going to buy a paper today. And you want to look at it in utter disbelief, the Mail has got an author who I've never heard of at the top, talking about Pamela Druckerman, talking about what she gave her husband for his 40th birthday. And it might raise... It's what all we've been talking about this morning.
Yeah, we're stunned.
I'm disgusted.
Have a look, if you will, if you're passing by our shop today. Front page of the Daily Mail.
You know when you just read something, you think, I cannot believe that. And then why would you put your face and name to it in a national newspaper?
There's a lot of questions, in the newsroom.
Not many answers
about that. There's also a second story that's raising eyebrows on the Daily Mail, which is you can't say that you can't call people convicts anymore. Apparently, it really upsets criminals. We should call them prison leavers or persons with lived experience.
We're all persons with lived experience. What are they talking about? Ex-con. Can't say ex-con.
Yeah, this is according to civil servants at the prison service headquarters. They've told wardens to stop using the phrase ex-con. Yeah. And instead call them...
prison leavers.
Prison leavers. It's like school leavers.
It's not quite the same, is it?
No, not quite. Do you agree with that? Do you think we should get rid of the phrase ex-con? Let us know. gbnews@gbnews.uk.
I think that's totally correct. And I actually work with ex-cons.
He does.
In some of the sort of volunteer work I do, trying to get people back, rehabilitated and back into society. So I know of quite a few ex-cons.
And do they mind being called ex-cons?
Well, I've never actually called them an ex-con, but they'd laugh at the idea of being called someone with lived experience or a prison leaver. Because they've committed crimes and you've got to acknowledge that and the seriousness of it if you're going to move on. You've got to repent for it, haven't you? You've got to be sorry for what you did. Not just say, oh, yes, I have lived experience. I've been to His Majesty's University of Life.
Yeah, well, that's what they'd like
for 5 years, or whatever. It's crazy.
Let us know what you think.
Woke gone mad.
Yeah, you'll definitely have a view on that one. gbnews@gbnews.uk, and indeed any of the stories that we're going to be talking about today. Or if you just want to say hello as well, that's nice too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But we'll kick off with our main news today. Should we better had Kemi Badenoch has lashed out at Brexiteers after they accused the government of U-turning on that promise to bin all EU law by the end of the year.
Well, Tory backbenchers are angry at the climb down over the so-called post-Brexit bonfire pledge, but the business secretary hit back, saying they're all talk and no action.
Let's talk to former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall, who joins us now. Claire, morning to you. We were promised this, weren't we? I mean, this was part of the whole point of Brexit, that we were running our own laws.
Well, we were. And I think this is yet another sign of the over-promising by the Prime Minister and his top team. It was never going to be really possible to do this by the end of the year, to have all of these sunset clauses without scrutinising the legislation that you're trying to unpick. You've got 40 plus years of regulation coming through and no real clear understanding of how that works together. Now, there could be problems with other pieces of legislation on the statute books already. You don't know the consequences of unpicking one, what that will have on another. And I would much rather have this go through properly and not just quickly, and have the Brexit that we were all promised in the first place. I think the timescale was wrong, and I think this is just the Prime Minister setting these targets to appease people without having the wherewithal to work out if he could get it done.
The only thing that I would question about that, Claire, is I heard an expert talking about this 6 months ago, saying actually any half-decent legal team, of 4 or 5 people, could get this done in 6 months. It's not as complicated, he was saying, as it's made out to be.
I think the problem you have is the setup of government, to be honest. When you look at these departments, how big they are, it's not as simple as saying one legal team can have a look at 4,000 pieces of legislation and work out what you do with them. Each department will have its own set of responsibilities. Each minister will have its own set of responsibilities. And I think the burden is not shared equally across those government departments. Someone like DEFRA, for example, the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Department, has more pieces of legislation than others. So it isn't quite as easy as saying a team of 5 people sit round a table and unpick it until it's done. There is an awful lot that goes on and some cross-departmental working that needs to be carved out as well. And that's never simple when it comes to government.
Well, Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Brexiteer and the GBNews presenter, he's blamed Whitehall for this. He said it's an inability of Whitehall to do necessary work and the incapability of ministers to push things through their own departments. He's called this the triumph of the blob. What do you make of those comments?
I think he's partially right, and he is a very clever man. I wouldn't ever like to go against his knowledge, but I think that to blame civil servants is probably a little unfair. It is the ministers who should be setting the timetable. Now, if there is pushback from civil servants, then that needs to be sorted out. But I don't think that you can entirely put this complicated process upon those people. There is an awful lot that needs to be done within government, and I think you are looking at departments which don't have enough staff in. Now, there could be an argument for coming back to the office, which I know that Jacob is very keen on. That could have a part to play in this. But I think that it needs to be shared equally alongside those ministers and staff within the government to see how much they actually know about the process, what they're looking at, and how much scrutiny is going to take place, because it's an awful lot of responsibility to lay upon one minister, for example, as to unpick this or leave it and it disappears. So I think it's probably right to remove that timetable. It was unreachable, but the Prime Minister needs to work on his expectation management. He's not showing that he's very good at that, as we've seen with the local elections.
Well, the problem is, and this sort of feeds into the local elections really with all of this, is that what we did see was Labour doing quite well in areas which were quite heavily pro-Brexit. Now, again, this is going to feed into that. This is going to leave the government with bigger problems trying to convince those people who backed them in 2019 to back them again at some point next year.
You're quite right. When you look at the split of voting, the Conservative Party didn't do well in Leave or Remain areas. And if you're going to look at those Leave areas, especially in the red wall seats, those people lent their votes to the Conservative Party and they feel betrayed. So if you don't look after somebody's vote, they're not going to follow you in the future. So I think it's been a huge mistake. And it just puts fuel on the fire of those people who wanted to remain in the EU by saying, oh, this is unachievable. So we have managed to alienate pretty much everybody. And unless you come up with a realistic timetable, what you're going to do, and a clear and transparent layout of this legislation that you're unpicking, tell us what it is. We need to understand a little bit more. You can't hide behind the, oh, this is a little bit difficult. You need to be a lot more transparent than that. I think the public deserves to know, and especially considering the majority voted for Brexit, and that hasn't been delivered.
And Claire, this has been a really tough week, hasn't it, for Rishi Sunak? First of all, losing more than 1,000 seats in the local election, and now fighting off what could be a rebellion in the backbenches, because he has essentially broken a promise, hasn't he? I mean, one of the cornerstones of his Tory leadership campaign was that there would be this sunset on EU law, and there's now going to be a climb down from that, isn't there?
That's right. If we all remember back to the summer of last year, Rishi Sunak had a very slick video with him putting a lot of paperwork of EU regulations through the shredder. He promised to do this. And I think to come now to May of 2023 and say, actually, no, I can't do it, it's not looking good. And we seem to bounce at the moment from a little bit of stability and a little bit of quiet to absolute chaos again. And there seems to be no middle ground. There's no managing of the process going forward. And I haven't seen anything that's come through to suggest he has a plan to deal with this. He sent Kemi Badenoch into the chamber of the House of Commons yesterday, which didn't go well. The anger on the backbenches was palpable. And there isn't anything coming forward as to what his plans actually are. So don't go and promise something in a slick video that you're not going to deliver.
OK. Claire, as always, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Love your thoughts on that this morning. Is it a big job and it's not that they won't do it, but they can't do it to that deadline? Or are they just not getting Brexit done? I don't know, but will any party then sort all this out? I mean, Kemi Badenoch sort of said, let me get the quote from her. She said, you know, it's not that it's a U-turn, it's the government's removing laws that we want to remove whilst protecting the important rights that derive from EU law. The whole point is that you're meant to sort of take EU law out of the statute books and then replace it with British law. Yeah. In a way, I mean, almost like for like. So, well, what's the point of that? Well, then it's sort of our sovereign law then, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, that's what many people who voted for Brexit, that's what they did it for. Yeah. I mean, so that we could make our own laws for ourselves. So you can understand the anger, can't you? But then, as Claire was saying, it takes time to unpick laws, especially if you don't want any sort of consequence or negative consequence, especially when it comes to businesses. So it's difficult, isn't it? Let us know what you think at home. gbnews@gbnews.uk.
Eurovision.
Yes.
Right, just to change track entirely. Scientists, you know, I feel... I love science. And
he does.
Scientists and all that
and
stuff,
Eurovision.
great. But sometimes they do come up with some stupid ideas. Right, here's one about the Eurovision. It's not all stupid. They said of the last 20 winning songs in Eurovision, 17 were about relationships, 13 used the word love, right? Which is sensible. This is from Professor Glenn Fosbray from the University of Winchester. Well, a lot of pop songs, successful pop songs about relationships, aren't they? But here we go. It says, this isn't the only similarity, as all 20 of them have repeating choruses, helping the viewers to remember the track when it comes to voting. Every pop song ever released has got a repeating chorus.
Repeating chorus, yes.
Virtually every hymn that's ever been composed has a repeating chorus.
Yeah.
Called rondo form.
It's not the greatest revelation, is it?
No.
It must be said. But I understand that about love. I mean, you're right, most pop songs are about love, but it is that universal theme. And in Eurovision, you've just got to grab people, haven't you, in about 2 minutes?
Yeah.
So love, everyone can relate to.
I'll tell you what I hadn't heard was Mae Muller's song. That's the UK entry.
Do you know what? I haven't heard it. Is it good?
Just listened to it this morning. I thought it was going to be a bit dour, because a lot of our songs have been lately. I didn't like the one last year, even though we did very well with it. It's a poppy tune.
Yeah.
Which I think is... Oh, here you go. There's a video for you. You can't hear it, but it's... But it's a
dance song.
It's a dance. It's quite Euro trash, which is what you need for Eurovision. It's what you need.
And who do you like then? You've got a favourite, haven't you?
Austria.
That's it. And their song
is called "Who the Hell is Edgar?"
That's it.
Which is about Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, it's weird, but it's so catchy.
So you would say the secret to a good Eurovision song is
catchy and trashy.
Catchy and trashy.
Fun. Fun, basically.
Fun. I'd say repetition.
Yeah.
Because in that song that you showed me, is it Austrian?
Yeah, Austrian.
Yeah, the Austrian one. It's the repetition, and that's what makes it catchy. There you go. So that's what I think.
Yeah, it is. It's a real crowd pleaser. Whether it'll come across the same on the telly, I don't know.
Well, let's hope so, because you've been talking it up, haven't you?
Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah.
I really like it. It's just it's crap.
When you played it to me, I thought it was great. So let us know, what do you think the secret is? The secret winning formula to Eurovision. Yeah. Is it the chorus? Is it the theme? Is it the repetition? Is it the bonkers?
And will Britain win this year? I don't know.
I'm going to say no.
No.
Sorry.
Hot favourite is Loreen from Sweden with her second pop at the...
Is she the one that's writhing around in the video?
I haven't seen the video, but she's won it before.
Has she?
With Euphoria, I think.
We're being told that's right in our ears. Very good.
And it sounds exactly like that song to me. Well, yeah, but loads of people, Ireland had what's his face won it loads of times.
They're kicked out now, Ireland.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, we need to move on. Let's tell you what else is happening today. It's 6:16. And Russia has denied reports that Ukrainian forces broke through their front lines, saying the military situation is under control. It comes after Russian military bloggers reported Ukraine was making advances towards the city of Bakhmut, with some suggesting a counter-offensive by Ukrainian forces had started.
Consumer group Which has found that holidaymakers are being charged significantly more for summer car hire in popular destinations than before the pandemic. Research shows car hire fees are up 77% above 2019 levels due to high demand and depleted stocks.
And President Zelensky will not be allowed to address the Eurovision Song Contest final tomorrow because organisers fear it will politicise the event. The Ukrainian leader wanted to make a video appearance urging the global audience to continue supporting his country against Russia's invasion. But the European Broadcasting Union says his request is against the rules. What? You gave me a puzzled look then.
I think that's a bit mean, because Ukraine are meant to be hosting it this year.
Yes.
I understand both sides, actually. I can see why you wouldn't want to politicise Eurovision.
It's not meant to be a political event. It's all about harmony.
But are we just avoiding the obvious, which is that Ukraine are meant to be hosting it and they're not?
It's the elephant in the room,
It is a bit.
Well, let's know what you think.
Yeah, let us know what you think.
Now,
talking of Eurovision.
Oh, dear me. Train services are being hit by more strike action this weekend. Members of ASLEF and the RMT are walking out in a long-running dispute. Some lines today, I mean, particularly today, actually, with ASLEF, and big lines like the West Coast Main Line, providing no services at all.
Well, the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, accused both unions of targeting the Eurovision Song Contest final in Liverpool, as thousands of fans are due to visit the city today and tomorrow.
Let's talk to travel expert Sally Gethin, who's here. Sally, good morning to you.
Morning.
All right, let's talk today, because it's ASLEF today, isn't it? What's happening?
Well, basically, if you had planned today to cover any distance by train, you can forget it. Oh. Really, it is that bad. The whole of the rail network in England particularly has come to a screeching halt. And your best bet is to just double-check with your rail operator. But most of the rail operators are saying, do not travel today. So, yeah, everything has come to this halt, and it's... For passengers, they have very little option other than to take their car or find some other form of public transport.
And it's a nightmare for people who are trying to get up to Liverpool. Many people going up to Eurovision would have been travelling today, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. So Eurovision will particularly be hit by this train strike, and it's very difficult for them. Don't forget, a lot of international visitors going to Eurovision would be coming in, say, to Manchester International Airport. Now, there is a limited rail shuttle available for those visitors to get to the show, but generally, you know, for everybody who's pinning their hopes to be there tonight, it's very difficult for them. And we've got a knock-on action. So RMT is taking action tomorrow. There'll be some more rail operators running, but a limited service. And ASLEF is implementing an overtime ban over the next week as well. So it's basically a screeching halt today and then a sort of staggering forward for the short term.
All right, so what happens after this weekend then? What's on the cards?
So ASLEF is also threatening strike action on Wednesday, the 31st of May, and also Saturday, the 3rd of June, which is the day of the FA Cup final. So that will impact a lot of, games and match supporters. The FA has said that it's going to lay on some 120 coaches to get home fans down to Wembley for that. But, yeah, generally that's going to have a big impact too.
Well, the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, has accused both of the unions of targeting the Eurovision Song Contest. You just mentioned there the FA Cup final on the 3rd of June, another strike action that's coincided with a large event like that. The unions are saying, no, that wasn't intentional. Is it really just a coincidence, or do you think that this has been manipulated to actually cause the disruption? Well,
you're right, and ASLEF is saying no, it isn't deliberately targeting these big events, but then you look, like I said, at the FA Cup final, then that is another big event. And so it literally is a blame game going backwards and forwards. I mean, the unions say that they've played ball over trying to avoid particularly big dates in the diary to take action, and they feel that their voice then went unheard by the government, you know, when they tried to mitigate action. So now they're saying, well, you know, we have to go ahead. And they feel they're doing it in the public interest anyway, because some of the things they're fighting for example, more ticket offices, for example, ticket counters at stations. And, you know, the drivers feel that it's in the interest of safety to have more staff on the trains rather than reducing their staff for passenger safety as well. So there's a lot of rhetoric, a lot of politics, of course, but obviously the person who suffers the most is you and I and the regular passenger.
What's been happening over the last few months? Because we actually haven't had any... It's hard to believe because it seems to have been going on forever, but we haven't had any strikes for actually quite a while.
Yeah, it's felt that way. I mean, in real terms, though, this strike action started in June of last year, so we've really had... we've had long gaps and then short action, and that actually was a deliberate ploy by the unions. They thought that would bring the rail delivery group, which represents train operators and the government behind them, to their knees. But that hasn't really worked. So they're flexing their muscles now, saying, well, we'll probably do more. And the RMT is putting a vote to its members, and if they get the right threshold of a yes vote, they are saying that they will take action over the next 6 months. Mm. So, yeah, sorry, there's no end in sight on the horizon. Right and now.
Sally, what do you think public support is like at the moment out there, especially when we're hearing about disruptions, things like Eurovision and the FA Cup final? I mean, a year on into this dispute, it must be waning.
I think the public's patience is wearing thin. I think people are losing sight. What is it about? It's who shouts the loudest in each side, what the reasons are for, and the blame game that's going on. I mean, I've seen on social media, complaints like, we're getting married this weekend, we can't get our family to be with us on the day, and sort of complaining loudly to the unions and the government, hey, guys, get together on this. So, we're coming into the summer season and people have activities planned and they want those weekend days out to do these great family get-togethers and other events. And not just the big football matches, but smaller ones too. Mm. So, and yes, in the long run also, if the plan is to get people off the roads and onto trains, this plan ain't working right now because people are going to have to take to the roads to get to their destination in the meantime.
OK. Sally, I would say it's good to see you. I don't know about that with this sort of news going on, but we appreciate seeing you. Thank you very much indeed.
You. Thanks for making sense of it, Sally.
Yes, it's just depressing news, isn't it?
It is.
And just rumble on for another 12 months.
Yes. The end is not in sight, is it?
No, it's not. We're going to talk to the Train Minister at the back end of this hour, so that should be interesting. But still to come, Russia sabre-rattling in response to the UK sending long-range missiles to Ukraine. We'll bring you the latest on that. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
Now, the UK has escalated its commitment to the Ukrainian war effort by donating long-range Storm Shadow missiles to Zelensky's forces.
Well, yesterday, the Defence Secretary outlined the reasons for this in the House of Commons. Let's take a listen.
Sadly, so far, at least 23,000 Ukrainian civilians have been killed or wounded, although the actual figure is likely to be substantially higher. Thousands of citizens have been sent to sinister filtration camps before being forcibly relocated to Russia. Some 6,000 children, ranging in ages from 4 months to 17 years, are now in, quote, re-education camps across Russia. The UN, as well as US investigators, have found that Russia has committed war crimes with reported evidence of executions, torture and sexual violence in civilian areas.
Let's talk to defence analyst Chris Newton, who's here. Morning to you, Chris.
Morning.
Hi, Chris.
Why is there a need for long-term, long-range missiles to be sent in?
Good morning. Effectively, why the Ukrainians need it is that, you remember in the summer of 2022, the West gave the Ukrainians HIMARS artillery, long-range artillery, and that was very effective at destroying command posts, logistics hubs, and so forth. The Russians have learned to place all of those elements away from the range of this long-range artillery. So the Ukrainians need longer-range weapons. So that's why they need this these long-range missiles, so that they can target command posts, ammunition depots, but also hard sort of targets as well, bridges, things like that, so that they can carry on with that effective.
So tell us about the Storm Shadow's missiles, because they're quite hefty, aren't they?
Yeah, they're 1,300 kilograms. Their range is 155 miles. The range of the HIMARS is 55 miles, so it gives them a much longer range. And yeah, they're designed to sort of penetrate and hit sort of hard targets, concrete, bunkers, big targets, effectively.
So with that sort of range, the idea is you could, in effect, theoretically, force Russia back to the borders, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing you can do with that with them is also target Crimea as well, so you can get kind of really into the rear and sort of mess about with their logistics and so forth. It will help them advance. I wouldn't say it would help them to advance in one go, because there's still a lot of occupied Ukraine to recapture, but it will certainly help them in terms of disrupting command and control and logistics and other things.
This comes after a promise from Mr Wallace earlier on in the year that if he continued to see Russian attacks into Ukraine, that we would be sending more weapons, and that promise has now come true, hasn't it?
Yes, and you know, we had a discussion early in the year about aircraft and so forth, and Wallace actually laid out a clear kind of justification as well. He said he also did this in response to Russian escalation as well, in terms of targeting energy infrastructure and their air campaigns against civilian targets as well, and also various Russian atrocities and so forth. So as long as that happens, you know, we'll continue to send the weapons.
Where does this fall within the idea of a spring offensive, at least, which we've been told is in the offing, but obviously getting little more than that at the moment?
Yeah, to do this now makes sense, you know, for a number of reasons. Firstly, because of the technicalities. The reason why it's taken this long is because you need to fit this missile that's made for Western aircraft onto Soviet aircraft, Soviet era sort of aircraft. So you have to do that. But in terms of the counter-offensive, it's good for that as well, partly because of what I've said, but also they're using this weapon at the start of the counter-offensive, so that the Russians will have to take time in order to develop sort of countermeasures and so forth. So if you do it at the start, it immediately wrong foots the Russians.
Has the spring offensive already started? Because we're hearing from some Russian bloggers that they're reporting movement of Ukrainian soldiers in Bakhmut. But then President Zelensky, talking just this week, said, no, it's too soon. We can definitely move forward, but if we do, we're going to have a huge loss of life, so we're going to sit tight.
I mean, that's a good question, because sometimes an offensive starts and everybody knows it starts off with a massive kind of operation, but sometimes it begins like the Russian winter offensive. It begins incrementally, and we're seeing localised counterattacks at the moment from the Ukrainians. Whether that indicates the start of the counteroffensive is hard to say at the moment. What I think is happening is that and this is just a guess because we don't know, the fog of war, don't know exactly what's going on, but perhaps what they're doing by attacking in Bakhmut, they're kind of forcing the Russians to divert resources from the south, which is where everyone thinks the counterattack is, the main attack is going to come, to the east, so that they're forcing the Russians with dwindling manpower to commit in different places, and that would hopefully soften up for the Russians in the south for a potential main attack. But the main attack could occur somewhere else.
Just before you go, because we're out of time, really, what do you make of what President Trump was saying this week? I could end this in 24 hours. Now, I heard that and thought, yeah, right, all the other one. But is there any substance to that? I can talk to the right people, I can stop this in 24 hours.
I mean, the thing is, he never says how he's going to do it. And the problem is that this is, we're talking about two very different kind of conceptions of international order, two conceptions of what Ukraine should be, an independent country versus, a Russian vassal. And that kind of dispute is not going to be resolved easily, and that's why it's ended in war, because you have two very different opposing visions, and I can't see how he's going to do it, because of the nature of the dispute. It's visceral. It's essential for Ukraine. So, fine, if he thinks he's got a way, explain. But at the moment, he hasn't explained.
Yeah, OK. Chris, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. Look, as prison officers are told to refer to ex-convicts as persons with lived experience. We'll have a look at that in a bit more detail. It's one of the stories in the papers, and we'll talk through them with Sean McDonald and Candice Holdsworth.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
6:36, this is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Let's take a look at today's papers for you now. And the Express captures RAF crews loading missiles after the UK confirmed it is supplying Ukraine with the weapons for its fight against invading Russian forces.
And now there's a great picture of a very, well, it's not about great, but there you go, a very tense-looking Andrew Bailey on the cover of the Financial Times. The Governor of the Bank of England was at a press conference following the decision to raise interest rates to 4.5%.
The Times has another great image, well, again, maybe not great, of a royal superfan. She was arrested at the Coronation after being stood next to eco-protesters, which was held for a number of hours.
Oh, dear. Now, Eurovision-wise, here's May Muller.
Now, that is a great picture.
Now, that is an interesting picture. This is on the Telegraph features section. The Londoners gearing up to represent the UK in the Eurovision Song Contest in Liverpool tomorrow.
Well, it's time to discuss the papers in a bit more detail now. And joining us this morning is broadcaster and host of the Blethered podcast, Sean McDonald, and writer and commentator, Candice Holdsworth. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Good to see you. Sean, let's start with you, shall we? This is the story that caught our eye this morning in the Mail. Don't say convicts because it upsets criminals.
Yeah, I heard you talking about this one earlier. The suggestion is that, yeah, we shouldn't be calling people in prison convicts. I think the suggestion seems to be that there are a lot of people on remand, that it's maybe archaic language. This is what's coming from a prison service spokesman, and they're clamping down on inappropriate deviations from their guidelines. You have, I think, let me just get his name. It is Mark Leach, a reformed armed robber and editor of the Prison Handbook. He said he agrees with the change in terminology, that it's language of 200 years ago, prisons are designed to reduce reoffending and so on. I think he pointed out that, yeah, there are a lot of people on remand. However, the prison system are saying other language to be used could be offender. But I think that's it's the same thing, isn't it?
It's the same thing.
Offender, convict. When I saw it, my personal reaction to it was, this is nonsense. I mean, I think if you spoke to someone in a prison, they would say, I have bigger fish to fry, I've got bigger concerns, I'm not particularly bothered. I think it seems to me as if it's the prison service maybe deviating or distracting from the real issues. You've got staff working out en masse, you've got overcrowding in prisons, resources are kind of an all-time low. I think it also maybe suits the Daily Mail, to be honest. I think everybody wins here because they would be quite happy to have that type of, look at this woke language debate. To be honest, I think it's nonsense. I think you would both agree.
Well, it is. Interestingly, Jack's been in touch in Herne Bay. Morning, Jack, who says there's no such thing as an ex-con. They're just convicts. They're only ex-cons if they're exonerated, which is a fair point.
That is.
It's like a near miss in an aeroplane, isn't it?
You know, if I was to play devil's advocate, say you had maybe committed tax fraud and you're being lumped in with someone who's committed a very, very serious crime and you were both being called a convict, but, I mean, that's me trying to really find something.
But they both are convicts, aren't they?
I mean, if I was in jail, it would not be top of my priorities, to be honest.
No. And you need to acknowledge that you're an offender.
I think so.
Don't you?
I think you're right.
I mean, that's part of the rehabilitation thing, isn't it? Oh, dear me. Candice, let's have a look at Miriam Cates in The Telegraph.
Yeah, so this is a story on the front page of the Telegraph. It's the Tory MP Miriam Cates. So she's arguing that stay-at-home mothers should be paid to stay at home with their children. She doesn't feel that Conservative tax policies that are used to help women with childcare, mostly working mothers, are good enough. She thinks that if people make the choice to stay home with their children, the government should help them. And she doesn't think that the current policies are conservative. She thinks conservative policy is helping people to stay home with their kids or even to have children. I find it interesting. I do think you need a bit more flexibility when it comes to funding childcare. I think just putting everything into nurseries and childminders creates huge demand when there's not enough supply, and that's what's pushing the prices up. If you could allow people to, say, pay a grandparent who would be much happier than going to a job, they'd much rather look after their grandkids, or allowing mothers maybe to...
Should you be paid for that?
I think, sadly, in the times that we live in, yes, I think it's practical. I think 20, 30 years ago, people could have done it because they just wanted to, but now people are working a lot later. And I think with the cost of living, most people have to work now. Both parents need to work, grandparents need to work. And I think it's just the only way that you have now to keep people in work, paying tax, and making sure childcare is affordable. It's a societal thing. I think that's the way we have to sort of look at these things now. It's not so much about individual choice anymore, which is maybe it was in the past. You could sort of make a choice what made sense for your family. Now I think we have to think about things in a much larger sense.
Yeah,
it is conservative, though, isn't it? I mean, it wouldn't be conservative, it wouldn't be true to form if someone was staying at home and not working and getting a tax break, which is what she's talking about.
Yes, yeah, I think that what she's focusing on mainly is just starting families. She doesn't think that Conservatives embody family values anymore. They're not incentivising people to do that, and that's what conservatism was all about. But I think it's interesting because women's values have changed. I mean, I think younger women now want to have a job. They want to have a career.
They do, but it's part of the problem that it's all... Being a housewife, for example, is seen as a negative term now.
I know, it's such a pity.
Which is a pity, because there's so much benefit from having a parent at home.
Oh, yes.
When the kids are little.
Definitely. And I think in the past, people used to be able to make that choice more freely, but now I just don't think the sums add up. Very few people are in the position where they can do that now because mortgage costs are so high, rent costs are so high.
Yeah.
What do you make of this, Sean? She says, why shouldn't the tax system recognise the investment that women are making in society?
It's a very tough one. I don't know. It's very hard for me to have an opinion. I don't have kids. You know, I don't really even know anybody who's in this sort of situation. I can understand where she's coming from, but again, it's like we talk about where are you allocating money. Money and resources are kind of thin on the ground across the board, and yeah, it's a tough one. I accept the point though as well about the benefit to society as well of having parents at home, but yeah, tough one.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the Telegraph. Sure, it's still with the Telegraph actually. There's a way we could all get a tax cut of 2%.
Yeah,
bring it on.
2% tax cut is available or is possible, says Mel Stride she's the Work and Pensions Secretary responsible for overseeing the government's drive to boost employment numbers. Now, they're saying there's still 400,000 fewer workers than before COVID. I'm a bit sceptical. I think Brexit's probably played a part in that. You've got the part of the workforce is leaving. You know, we hear across the hospitality industry and farming, these types of things, what you would be classed as sort of, I don't believe they are, but lower skilled menial jobs. Obviously, I think there are a hell of a lot of people probably have left their jobs in the wake of the pandemic. Even taxi drivers, imagine trying to get a taxi sometimes. So the workforce has been impacted quite significantly. So they're saying if we can get more people back into work, there'll be more paid into the system. We could have a tax cut of 2%. This comes after, obviously, the 12th successive rise in interest rates.
This is a golden opportunity for those who are unemployed, then.
Well, I mean, in theory, but where are these jobs? You know, that's the thing. So what are the jobs? It's all well and good saying, you know, go and work. Like, work where?
Yeah.
You know,
if it's all in London, if this is all in London, for example, No, fair point.
Candice, talking about the interest rates decision yesterday, there might be some good news on the way, though, in the Times. Food prices on their way back down.
Yes, so this is a very interesting story on the front page of the Times and relevant to so many people. The supermarkets have said that it looks like food prices may have peaked, so it's about 19.2%, and now they're going to come down. And I think that this is what they're projecting anyway. I think that this is what people need to hear, because everyone's struggling at the moment with food prices, energy prices, interest rates going up, so people's mortgage payments are going up as well. I think the thing that everyone has been worried about, though, is even though the rate's going to come down, how much are we going to be stuck with these prices? Are these prices baked in? Which is what some of the union leaders have been saying, that we're going to have higher food prices for years to come, although they're saying, no, they're going to start coming down, which is what I think we need, because otherwise we're all just poorer.
Well, at least we have a competitive structure, don't we? And you would expect Tesco's and Asda and all the rest of them to start a price war on this.
Yes, and they need
to... Get the customers back in.
Yes, and they need to start passing on falling energy prices, so their costs are lower, onto consumers. We need to be able to see that now, because we're not. So far, we haven't. Even with the wholesale price of energy coming down, which does impact food producers, ordinary people are still not feeling that, and that really needs to start being reflected now in prices.
Yeah. I tell you what, there are some good deals out there. I went to a supermarket the other day, and it's not something I buy very often, but we needed another tub of sweetener, right? Hardly use it, but it lasts for years, but there you go.
Yeah.
£5.50.
Ridiculous.
It was. But if I used my... because I've got a loyalty card, it was reduced... They knocked £3 off.
Holding your ransom, aren't they, for your data?
Well, yeah, but who cares? Let them have the data. If they're going to knock £3 off a bottle of sweetener... I'm
happy with that as well, but there's a wee part of me is a bit annoyed that I have to scan my daft wee card. And there's another thing. Greek yoghurt, the price keeps fluctuating. Chicken keeps fluctuating. Things that you need, just sort of basic, everyday things. And it's the yo-yoing of the pricing that annoys me as well. There's no predictability.
No,
Start passing on savings.
Yeah, up like a rocket, down like a feather.
Yes. Now, stay with us, you two, because we're going to take an early break, but that's so we can talk a bit more to you, hopefully, and potentially to a minister as well in just a few minutes. That's the Rail Minister, Hugh Merriman, as we all brace ourselves for more strikes.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We are still going through the papers with broadcaster and host of the Blethered podcast, Sean McDonald, and writer and commentator Candice Holdsworth. And Sean, let's come back to you, shall we? And this is in the Eye about a royal superfan arrested at the Coronation because she was stood next to eco-protesters.
Yes, so this is Australian architect Alice Chambers. She travelled to central London waiting to catch a glimpse of the King during his coronation. She was arrested on suspicion of potential to cause a breach of the peace, no bother George Orwell, at about 9 a.m. because she happened to be near another dozen people who were arrested again on suspicion of causing disruption. She said that during her 13-hour ordeal, she was repeatedly questioned, she was subject to physical searches, held in a cell, had DNA fingerprints and her pictures taken, all the while tearfully trying to explain she had no idea what was going on. She didn't know why she was there. The Met Police have said the arresting officer was from Lincolnshire Police and it's for them to deal with, and it's been passed to the relevant force to investigate. If anybody watched last week, they would have seen me going mental about this, the powers that were passed on to the police and that were given royal assent very quickly in order to arrest people. I obviously understand it's a unique situation. You know, tensions are probably high. The police are told, do not, under any circumstances, allow any disruption. You cannot arrest people because you think they might cause disruption. You cannot arrest people because they're maybe going to be holding placards or saying, not my king. That's your democratic right. And I think this is the perfect example, and my sympathy with Alice Chambers is really high. Imagine what she must have been thinking the whole time. And she also said that she goes to these things by herself. So she was released from even when they realised there was a serious mistake made, it took a further 2.5 hours to let her go from Wandsworth Police Station. At this point, this poor woman is in a part of London she potentially doesn't recognise and being set out, let go after 13 hours of being locked up. Serious lessons should be held, and I hope she is used as a sort of poster case for why this absolutely should be nipped right in the bud.
What do you reckon, Candice?
Yeah, I'm largely in agreement. I mean, I think the questions need to be asked about what went wrong at the coronation with these protests. Obviously, you need to stop disruption, and I think the police were just like, pick your poison, right? Be criticised for shutting down the protests or be criticised for letting them ruin the coronation, if that's what they were planning to do. We don't know that. That's what they claim, that they had intelligence that they were going to do something. All these groups say that is not true. We were liaising with the police the whole time and suddenly they just arrested us.
But they were, I mean, the police, certainly said at the time, look, they were, with some of the placard business, they weren't arrested because they had placards, but some of the stuff that they saw there were locking on devices.
Yes, this is
so
what
they can lock themselves to railings or to each other, or...
Yes.
That was the suspicion.
Yes, that was the suspicion. I mean, the thing is, what a lot of people have said is you can't arrest people for pre-crime. Obviously, you can arrest people, though, if you think that they're going to do something, if they're plotting something. I mean, you don't always just wait till they've committed the crime.
No.
I think this was very badly mishandled, though. In a free country, you absolutely have the right to say, not my king, and you should be allowed to do that. And it's not ruining the coronation. I think we need to see, though, what the police's intelligence was, what they thought was going to happen, and if there were enough grounds to arrest these protesters. What happened with this woman, though, is truly appalling.
I mean, it is our democratic right to protest, but Sean, would you... I mean, there are reports in the papers this week that apparently rape alarms were found on some protesters. They were planning to throw it in front of the horses. I mean, can you understand at that point where you'd be endangering the lives of the public, of the people that were riding those horses? 'Cause you'd spook them, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. There has to be a sort of measure of what is the greater good or the lesser evil in this sense. I think even the most ardent arbiter or defender of free speech and democratic rights would have to be incredibly naive to think that the police aren't going to take things a lot more seriously, because it was a huge event, whether you agree with it or not, whether you're for it or not. So you have to be realistic here. But if the police are saying this, that they found whether it's rape alarms or they had, we had intelligence that people were going to throw paint was one of the things that they said, then to that I would say, well, you have to present that evidence. Otherwise, we're going to have to assume that you're making it up until such times as you kind of say, look, here's what we have.
But this is where we have to be very careful, because we're all making assumptions, and for people who, we need to see that evidence, don't we? I mean, I know some people have been released without charge, some people it will go further, and therefore you have to see, don't you? We almost have to force ourselves to wait a little bit on this one.
Yeah, definitely. I think lessons should be learned. Let's hopefully have this as a bit of a black mark, but let's have a positive outcome. Let's learn from it. And this was exactly the point I was making last week, and Eamon understandably was referencing the Stop Oil protesters and saying, why should I be stopped getting to work, getting to my event? And I said, no, I completely agree with you. But in this instance, it should send a shiver down your spine when there are powers granted to the police to be able to arrest people for very minimal things, or for, like we said, pre-crime. And here we have an example of someone who potentially on the surface could have said, yeah, that's it, arrest them. You two were arrested, and it doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum you're on, which side of the political divide. It should kind of make you think, oh no, because it's all well and good when it's not you, but if it happens to someone else, then it could very easily happen to you.
No, it's an interesting one. Any thoughts on that? Let us know. Let's have a look at the Times and Eurovision. I'm a bit torn on this one, because I just don't know. I mean, Eurovision have said, or the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, have said President Zelensky can't make an address to the Eurovision tomorrow night because it would be political.
Yes.
And that's not what they do.
Yes. So
but he is the president of the host, or the winning nation, who should be the host nation.
I know. This is such a difficult thing. Apparently he was also turned down for the Oscars as well, but he requested to make a speech there, and they said, no, it's not a political event. I think we do need events that aren't political, that are maybe outside of the news and the politics cycle. I completely understand why Zelensky wants to do this. I think a lot of people would appreciate him doing it. But I do think we do need things which are apolitical. I think it's important for society to take a step back from politics and to have forums for that.
I completely agree. If President Zelensky was given the opportunity to use Eurovision as a platform, I certainly wouldn't have had any objections. But I completely agree that, it would be good to just have, just a little bit of shelter from that. I'm actually, for the first time in my life, going to a Eurovision party in London tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't think of anything worse. So I'm very sorry to the person who's invited me, but I'm sure it'll be a laugh. I'd never actually watched Eurovision.
Stephen's been to a party.
Well, I went to the Eurovision, the London Eurovision party where you see all the acts and things, and that was great. I haven't watched it for years because I'm always working the next morning.
There's been a few good songs recently. I heard you talking about, how is this, is it Loreen, the one who...
Oh, Loreen.
How is she getting to go back on again if she's already won it?
Oh, you can do that.
That's what I said.
You can do that.
I thought once...
There's no rules against it,
Sean.
Right,
okay.
No.
Very good tune. I was in the bathroom when I heard you talking about it and I was singing.
Oh, well, there you go. There's an image we could do without. Thank you both very much indeed. Don't go anywhere. We've got the latest GDP figures and we'll tell you what they mean for you very shortly.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McKibben from the Met Office with your GB News forecast. It is a gloomy start out there for many of us, but brighter weather is on the way. If not today, then certainly in tomorrow. There'll be warm sunny spells developing. We've got low pressure retreating into the near continent, higher pressure arriving from the northwest, and it's towards the northwest where we've got the sunniest skies. But an easterly airflow has brought a lot of low cloud in from the North Sea overnight, and where that low cloud is thickest, North Sea coast, for example, and over some of these eastern hills, some drizzle and some more prolonged rain and drizzle coming into East Anglia in the southeast. by the afternoon. That's going to make it feel on the cold side with a brisk wind coming from the North Sea. Temperatures on the coast 10 to 13 Celsius. But further west, plenty of bright skies and warm sunny spells developing, high teens here. Mostly dry for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but for Wales and the southwest, 1 or 2 showers could develop into the afternoon, nowhere near like the showers that we've seen through the week. They soon disappear into the evening, and then most places are dry on Saturday morning. But again, a lot of low cloud covering much of eastern UK, especially England and into East Wales. Once more, some drizzle around the North Sea coast to wake up to on Saturday. And that stubborn low cloud persisting for at least the morning for many of us, if not into the early afternoon for some central and eastern spots. But for Scotland, Northern Ireland and eventually northern and western England, as well as the south, and for Wales, warm sunny spells will come through. It's mostly dry, but you wouldn't rule out a shower developing for some southern counties of England, where temperatures here will reach 21 Celsius. Also 21 Celsius possible for the north of Scotland, where there'll be plenty of sunshine on offer. But by Sunday, wet weather moves into northern Scotland, drifting south during Sunday and Monday to affect the rest of the UK.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 12th of May. Today, the Prime Minister at loggerheads with his own party after U-turning on the government's pledge to scrap 4,000 EU laws still on the statute books. Rail workers aren't running out of steam as the strikes continue today across the country's railways.
The UK has supplied Ukraine with long-range Storm Shadow cruise missiles. What are these weapons and what does it mean for the war? And as the Bank of England raises interest rates for the 12th time in a row, we'll bring you the latest GDP figures and reveal what it means to the pound in your pocket.
And there's still time to have your say just in this year's Trick Awards. GB News Breakfast is up for Multi-Channel News Programme of the Year.
And our lovely Stephen Dixon is nominated for Best News Presenter, so cast your vote using the QR code on the screen now, or you can go to trick.org.uk, but get a wiggle on because votes close at 5 p.m. today. And Stephen's brilliant and he really deserves it. So if you love him lots, and I know you all do, get your votes in. Brad is in Richmond this morning. Good morning to you, Brad, who said, just voted for Stephen, well done.
Thank you, Brad.
And Chris from West Sussex says, morning, Stephen and Ellie. My vote is for GB News and for lovely Stephen. I love watching you and the rest of the GB News team. I'm off for 4 days now, but I still get up at 4:30 to feed and walk the kids, aka the dogs. 3 generations of English Springer Spaniels. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Chris.
You keep up the good work. You must be exhausted.
Yeah, you
have
must
a proper day off.
You can watch us all weekend now, Chris. That's great.
You can. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, on this sort of the bonfire of the legislation sort of thing that was meant to be happening with these European laws, Graham's been in touch. Morning, Graham. He says, I watched Kemi Badenoch in the House of Commons yesterday, and what she said about EU laws makes a lot of sense. They need to explain it to the public properly. But she said, well, they're going to get rid of the ones that they want to get rid of and leave the rest. It all gets very confusing, though, because Kemi Badenoch has now lashed out at Brexiteers because they've accused the government of U-turning on the promise to bin all EU law, which they did promise that they'd get rid of it all by the end of the year.
Well, Tory backbenchers are angry at the climb down over the so-called post-Brexit bonfire pledge, but the business secretary hit back, saying they're all talk and no action.
Let's talk to the editor of CapEx, John Ashmore. Good to see you, as always, John. What do you make of this?
Yes, it's very interesting, isn't it? I think my basic view is that the government has probably done the right thing, but it's made an enormous mess for itself. And the criticism that is aimed at it, I think, is entirely of Rishi Sunak's own creation, because he made this grandiose promise to shred, his words were, shred EU law. And then they came up with this piece of legislation that was going to automatically get rid of something like 4,000 pieces of legislation by the end of the year. And I think this kind of climb down has been coming, though. I mean, we saw during this process earlier in the year that the government was saying, oh, we've discovered there are actually even more pieces of EU law than we realised in the first place. I also think that it's generally a bad idea to just set a kind of arbitrary deadline and then say, oh, right, we're going to get rid of all of this thing by then. But there's no doubt that this is a big U-turn. I can understand why the ERG, the European Research Group, they call them hardline Brexiteer Tory MPs, are upset about this. At the same time, whether or not it's a huge political blow for the government is a different question, because if you look at, for example, the Northern Ireland, the Windsor Framework vote a month or so ago, only 22 Tory MPs voted against that. We're not in the situation we were under, say, Theresa May, when that same group of MPs wielded a lot of power. So when Kemi Badenoch says, oh, they're all talk and no action, that's not really true. These MPs had a huge influence on the Brexit process. They basically managed to help bring down Theresa May as Prime Minister and were instrumental in helping Boris Johnson then ascend to the top job. So they've been very influential. But whether they now carry the same clout they once did, I think is highly debatable.
There's going to be a real split in the Tory party about this, isn't there? I mean, Kemi Badenoch, the darling of the Tory right, you could see the anger in the chamber yesterday when she was speaking. And the Brexiteer Jacob Rees-Mogg, also GB News presenter, he said that this is all down to an administrative failure, the inability of Whitehall to do their work, the triumph of the blob, he called it. Whereas Kemi Badenoch was essentially saying it's not as easy as all that. It's going to take time to unpick EU law. Who's right on this, do you think?
Well, it's very difficult to say whether or not civil servants have been working hard or not if you're not, in the office with them. This is definitely a bugbear of Jacob Rees-Mogg's, though. You can tell from his own time in government. He thinks that the machine works too slowly. I would put that down more to kind of process than sort of individual. I think he used the word idleness. If you talk to people who've been in government, they always say, the system does not work well. It's very hard to get things done. Boris Johnson said the same thing. Tony Blair said the same thing way back in the day. He said he had scars on his back from trying to reform things. I also do sympathise, though, with what Kemi Badenoch said, that this is an inherently technical, legal process. It's very complicated. There have been a lot of complaints both from lawyers and from businesses that if they do this, it's going to create a kind of regulatory nightmare. So I think that both of them can have a point. It's not either one thing or the other necessarily.
The problem is with all of this, there's reality and then there's politics, and it's the optics, isn't it? At a time when all the parties are fighting for the votes, and it would seem like leavers are leaving the Conservative Party for Labour, or certainly that's what it looks like in the last general election, last local elections. And the optics here are just not good.
I think the problem is that one that you've identified, Stephen. It's that the government saying one thing and then not following through, particularly when your brand is about competence and getting things done. I don't think this particular issue is going to cost them a huge amount of votes. I also think the fact that Leavers are switching to Labour in local elections, even with all the usual caveats about local elections, turnout is low and so on. I think Brexit is a less salient issue now than it was in previous elections, certainly less than in 2019. I don't think you'll see the Conservatives campaigning on a particularly kind of Europe-heavy platform in 2024, because ultimately what all voters want is a resolution to those big ticket problems of inflation, general kind of economic malaise, and immigration's the other one that you see time and again. That that's why Rishi Sunak's gone so big on stopping the votes, and that does seem more linked. That's sort of thematically linked to Brexit, but it's not the same thing as this technical process of leaving the EU. So yeah, I think, like you say, it's the optics and the consistency that's the real issue here, rather than necessarily whether voters desperately want all EU law repealed by the end of the year.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is, it is another divisive issue, isn't it, for a Tory party that is already on the back foot. I mean, they lost over 1,000 seats in the local elections last week, and now Rishi Sunak is appearing to have broken a promise, because this was the cornerstone of his Tory leadership campaign, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it does create problems with him, with a certain part of his party. But like I said before, I think those divides are less raw than they were, say, a few years ago, just simply by dint of the fact that we have already left the EU. And I do go back to that vote on the Northern Ireland, the Windsor Framework, and the size of the rebellion there compared to previous Tory rebellions is much lower. I think the bigger problem for the Conservatives is less that sort of split between Brexiteers and others. It's more a potential kind of lack of morale. If you see your parties losing, doing really badly in the polls, then obviously you have much less impetus to get out there and campaign and so on, really hit the pavement. And the opposite is the case with Labour. If you think you're doing well, if you're gaining councils, gaining councillors, then that creates a bit of momentum. To me, this is one more item in a kind of litany of problems for the government, unfortunately for Rishi Sunak.
OK, John, good to see you this morning. Loads of you getting in touch on this. A little bit of sort of conspiracy theory, if you like. Eileen says Sunak is letting down this country. He's not getting Brexit done. He must get rid of EU laws for the UK to progress. It's outrageous. Give us back the man we voted for, Boris.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting, because John says we didn't lend our vote to the Tories in the Red Wall areas. We lent our vote to Boris Johnson. And a lot of people like me are now politically homeless because we can't vote Labour. That's interesting.
Will Lib Dems sweep up at the next general election? Potentially. I mean, local elections, we did see places like Windsor turn towards Lib Dems, didn't we?
Yeah, they're very good in local elections,
That's been
though.
very
strong. They're very strong locally, but less strong nationally. But it'll be interesting to see if they do make a bit of a resurgence.
Yeah. Eileen says Sunak is letting down this country.
did that one.
Oh, sorry, you've already done that one. Jerry from Ramsgate
Thanks for
says
listening, though.
it's obvious. You just do such a wonderful job. I just... zone. It's obvious that the Remainer civil servants are frustrating the removal of the EU laws in our country. The Remainers will not accept that the electorate voted to leave the European Union.
Similar from Paul, that says the problem is MPs and civil servants are Remainers and want us back in Europe. They've been doing everything possible to damage this country as a punishment on the English people.
Cons. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go on.
I just think... Con says Sunak, just like all MPs, is not to be trusted. This is why people lose all hope as they are asleep at the helm.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I think that... I mean, as Paul says, that they're trying to damage the country. I don't think anyone would do that. It's crackers, isn't it?
Well, it's their country as well, isn't it?
But maybe... I don't know.
I don't know. It's got you talking.
I'm on the fence.
That's for sure.
I'm on the fence. I would sort of like to see all these laws go in a way, because we're now not part of the EU, so I have EU laws, but perhaps it is more problematic than
who were you talking to the other day that said that with a good bunch of lawyers you could do it very quickly?
It was an interview I heard on the radio, and it was 6 months ago. But sort of saying, it was a lawyer who specialises in this sort of thing, says there's no reason why this just couldn't get done very quickly, within a few months, with a decent group of lawyers. So, and he was an expert in this field, but I'm not, so I don't know.
No.
Depends who you believe.
John says they've had 8 years to unpick EU laws. Keep your views coming in. gbnews@gbnews.uk. Now,
No, go on. You first.
Now, GDP figures have just in the last few moments been released. The UK economy shrank in March, but still achieved growth in the first quarter of this year. While new data from the Office for National Statistics shows that UK GDP fell by 0.3% in March, which is worse than some economists anticipated.
Are you confused yet? Yeah. The Bank of England, of course, raised interest rates 4.5% yesterday. So what does all of this mean for the UK economy? Thankfully, someone who can make sense of these very confusing figures is former advisor to the Bank of England and the UK Treasury, Dr. Roger Gewolb, who's here. Good to see you, Roger.
Good morning.
As always. So what do you make of all of these figures? I mean, the fact that the quarter up till March, or till the end of March, we grew by 0.1%. Is that a good thing?
Well, yeah, it's a positive thing, of course, Stephen. But I mean, these are very small figures, mostly of interest to economists and people who build the business models for our economy and our national debt calculations. But they don't really affect you and me very much on a daily basis. It's interesting to know, but I think they are figures which are at least moving very slightly in the right direction.
Very slightly in the right direction, but did fall by 0.3% in March, even though the overall picture is it grew in the first quarter. So what happened in March?
I think the services sector fell. I'm just looking at the figures which has just come in. It fell by 0.5%, and that was the main contributor to the fall. But these monthly figures are not all that meaningful because, of course, it's only a period of 4 weeks, and it then can reverse the next month as it has. That's why the 3-month, the quarterly figures are more meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, can we take anything from the individual sectors? Output in consumer-facing services fell by 0.8%, production output grew by 0.7%, construction sector grew by 0.2%, all this in March. Do we take anything from these individual sectors or not?
I don't personally. I want to look at a longer period, at least a 12-month graph, to see what trends are really emerging. A couple of large construction companies might have had some new contracts come in, and that boosts them for a period. You know, I think it's too short term to draw any huge conclusions.
But in terms of, you say, heading in the right direction, is this all tied with? Inflation is supposedly falling. Interest rates went up yesterday, but were sort of advised that could be the last rise for a while. Is that all positive in and of itself?
Well, no, I don't think the interest rate rises are positive. The GDP growth and the even small increments being positive is, of course, good news rather than it being the other way. But I think the biggest, it's interesting to look at the news this morning and the Twitter feed. Things do seem to be unraveling a bit, as you said, and certainly in those areas where I have some expertise, as the lawyer you heard said, a lot of the problems that we have could be resolved, in an afternoon or a week, and for some reason they never seem to be. But the biggest problem is the interest rate rises, which I personally have been saying for a year never should have happened.
Yeah, because there was some controversy about that. On the front page, I think it's the Financial Times this morning, you can see Andrew Bailey looking visibly quite stressed. Obviously, you don't think it was the right decision?
No, you cannot fight the type of inflation that we have in the UK by raising interest rates. Very, very simply, the inflation is coming from food and energy. You can't stop eating and you can't stop heating. It isn't consumer spending. Crushing people with increasing amounts of debt burden is not going to stop that. And they just persist. The dots are starting to connect now. People are starting to talk about Rishi and his government, rolling back on various promises, possibly over-promises. Now this morning they're saying, well, gosh, maybe the fight against inflation isn't working. Maybe the interest rates aren't working. Well, many people could have told them that a very long time ago. And to put it in perspective, I just asked myself, if a football manager lost 12 consecutive games, totally, would they not be escorted off the pitch?
Well, you do. Do you think then, if you think the dots are being joined somewhat, do you think we're heading to a point where actually we could start to see the interest rates being rolled back, even though they are just at what we'd consider normal levels 10 years ago?
Well, we have the kind of inflation that falls by itself. In 2009, we had a similar situation. The then leadership of the Bank of England didn't touch interest rates. They left them at 0.5% for 3 years. And the inflation cost push, it's called, disappeared by itself. It's scheduled to go down to 2 or 3% next winter. No credit to any of all these folks who are claiming credit for it. It's happening in 10, 12 other countries as well. At that point, yes, Stephen, they'll absolutely have to reduce interest rates.
Roger, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the time is 17 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories. And Russia has denied reports that Ukrainian forces broke through front lines, saying the military situation is under control. It comes after Russian military bloggers reported that Ukraine was making advances towards the city of Bakhmut, with some suggesting a counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces had started.
Online giant Amazon is to fund more than 300 new apprenticeships over the next year. A range of jobs are being offered, including digital marketing, visual effects and cyber security.
And President Zelensky will not be allowed to address the Eurovision Song Contest final tomorrow because organisers fear it could politicise the event. The Ukrainian leader wanted to make a video appearance urging the global audience to continue supporting his country against Russia's invasion. However, the European Broadcasting Union said his request is against the rules.
Now, if you want to win Eurovision, sing about love.
Sing about love.
Apparently.
Yes.
So, therefore, this is according to a new study by someone from the University of Winchester. Of the last 20 winning songs, 17 were about relationships. All pop songs about relationships, basically. And 13 used the word love, apparently.
Aww. You can understand that, though. It's a universal theme, whatever language you speak.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
So there you go.
They're onto something there.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Heroes, Sweden. Oh, that's 2015. Heroes, Man Zermilov. Oh. That was a good song.
Is this a list of winners?
This is a list of winners.
Oh yeah, and we're nowhere to be seen, are we?
No, we aren't. We must be here somewhere.
No, we're not.
Is it that long ago since we won?
It's that long ago. We came second last year. We didn't do too badly.
Dana International for Israel. That was 1998. Fly on the Wings of Love, 2000, the Olsen brothers.
Yeah.
Actually, that was a catchy tune. Fly on the wings of love.
There you go, it's about love. Maybe they're onto something. Let us know. Is it repetition? I think it's probably repetition of entire phrases or individual words.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what it is. But does it have to be about love? Is it just how catchy it is? Does it have to be a dance tune? Sometimes ballads do well, don't they?
Sometimes they do, but I never like those.
You're not into that, are you?
No, I want a bit of fun.
I think you'll like May Miller's track.
It is actually a good little tune. I'm surprised. You haven't heard it yet. What are you talking about?
I do know it's dancey. I know it's up your street. I know that much.
It's all right.
I'll have a listen in the ad break and I'll let you know.
Which
I know
is
you're all
weird,
waiting on my opinion.
Because at home, I listen to classical music.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. I've reached that age now.
He's so
I have
classy.
reached that age.
He's so classy.
I do. I put on classical music at home.
Oh, you're so cute.
God, that makes you sound really posh, doesn't it?
And you like to bake?
I'm not. Oh, well, I've not done that for a while.
Bit of everything? Yeah, he does it all, does our Stephen. Oh, and he's up for a Trick Award. I'll keep doing it. He's up for Best News Presenter, so please vote for him. trick.org.uk, and there's also a QR code, which we'll get up for you at some point. Yes. But do vote. 5 p.m. today, that closes, so do get your votes in for Stephen.
You can vote for the programme as well.
And also the programme.
Yes.
But also Stephen. Thank you very much.
That means you could go and come on and get an award.
Well, if you win, I hope you take me up with you. And I'll be like this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's how you vote. So if you go up to the screen now and scan that QR code with your phone, it takes you to the page and you can vote. You can vote for GB News Breakfast, for multi-channel news programme, and then you can vote for Stephen for Best News Presenter.
But also, on that, because I put that online, that picture,
yeah,
and the number of people who've said, why has Ellie got 3 arms?
I know, it's very confusing.
And it's because I must have my arm round your waist.
You do. So we were asked by the photographer, it was like a prom photo. So they were like, and together, and it's like, Stephen had his hand on my waist, then for some reason I felt the need to hold your hand.
Yeah. Oh, you're snorting.
It is a bit like a brother and sister. Yeah,
like
so it looks like I've got 3 hands and it's really awkward.
It does, but
I don't like that photo anyway, because I look like Kermit the Frog.
Yeah.
I have said this to him.
You have, yeah. You don't. You look lovely in it.
And Tony today is saying, good morning, Ellie. That colour you're wearing reminds me of that awful cough mixture that we had as children.
Oh, that's kind,
so thanks, Tony. Very kind this morning. I look like Calpol.
Calpol, there you go.
I think it's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it looks very nice.
Thanks, Stephen.
Like a licorice all sorts.
At least someone thinks it looks nice.
Now, we need something to smile about, don't we? Because if you're trying to get a train...
Yes.
Ooh, you're not going to be very happy, because train services are being hit by more strike action this weekend. Well, starting today, actually, where members of the ASLEF union are taking action. The RMT tomorrow walking out in long-running disputes, with some lines providing no services at all.
Well, the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, accused both unions of targeting the Eurovision Song Contest final in Liverpool as thousands of fans are due to visit the city.
Well, let's talk to former RMT Assistant General Secretary Steve Headley. Good to see you this morning, Steve. Commuters are going to be absolutely fed up to the back teeth, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I think they are, to be fair. I mean, I think that this is a long-running dispute, and the government are not only not providing a solution, they're actively preventing the solution being found by the participants, which are the trade unions and the companies. These are private sector companies, and the government are putting restrictions and shackling them and not allowing them to find an end to this dispute.
Are you deliberately... I hope...
Oh, his line's gone.
His line gone. Steve, are you still with us?
No, sorry, we've lost him.
We will try and get back to Steve.
I tell you what is interesting, that the boss of ASLEF, Mick Whelan, has said we're in a worse position now than we were 6 months ago, as far as the unions are concerned. But offers have, I mean, certainly with the RMT, offers have been made that have been rejected. Was it 8% over 2 years, if memory serves me right? And that was all been rejected. I mean, I don't know. I'd love to know if you either work in the system, if you're one of those affected, then let us know what you think. I think we've got Steve back.
Hi, Steve. Have we got you?
Hi.
Yes, we've got him. Right. Steve, are you deliberately disrupting the Eurovision Song Contest tomorrow? Because people will be looking at these dates. There's also scheduled walkout from ASLEF on the 3rd of June, the FA Cup final. So, you know, people are watching this thinking you're deliberately targeting the people.
I'm not deliberately doing anything. I mean, I'm an ex-official from the RMT. I'm here as a pundit.
OK, well, are the unions deliberately disrupting?
I can explain why those dates were chosen, and that was that they were chosen for leverage. And trade unions put on dates in order to bring the employers, and in this case the government, to the negotiating table. That's why those dates were chosen. And unfortunately, it's not worked. The government have been as intransigent as ever, won't let the employers negotiate properly, and won't let a solution to this dispute be found.
Well, in terms of resolving this, what do you think is the big issue? Because do you think it's down to the money, or do you think it's down to the terms and things like more staff on trains, more ticket offices, all those sort of things?
Well, I don't think that it's about more staff or more ticket offices. It's about maintaining the staff that they're actually there at the minute. The railway is run on overtime. People do at least one shift overtime a week, usually 2 shifts overtime. So it's understaffed at the minute, and they want to cut more staff, and what that'll do is destroy the work-life balance of people already there. And of course, there is wages. We have an extraordinary position where taxpayers are funding private companies to the tunes of billions of pounds a year. These companies are then paying their shareholders hundreds of millions in dividends, and workers haven't had a pay rise in 3 years, and it's absolutely appalling. We've got £42 billion of unclaimed tax, unpaid tax in this country, which could easily be taken up, which would not only pay the rail workers, but every worker in the public sector out there. It would settle all those disputes.
What's your sense of where the public are at on this, Steve? Where is public support at the moment? Because you can understand this has been going on a year now, well, almost, since June of last year, this dispute, and it doesn't look as though there's going to be any end to it anytime soon.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd imagine the public are fatigued with it. I think that they're fed up with the whole situation, but I think that being the public and being kind of not really aware of all the issues, I think that they'll blame both sides. I think that they'll blame government, and I think that they'll blame the trade unions because they're fatigued by the whole situation. But I think what has been remarkable is the amount of public support that's been maintained, and that's quite simply because a lot of people are in the same boat. A lot of people understand that, you know, when inflation's running at 10% this year and 10% last year, an offer of 4% last year and 4% this year leaves a deficit of around 12%. It'll be a real terms pay cut of 12%. And on top of that, you've got job cuts and, the destruction of terms and conditions. So people do understand, and I think a lot of people are still sympathetic.
Final thoughts, Steve, on this. I mean, this tactic of, a bunch of strikes, then a significant period not. This was clearly designed to try and bring the companies to their knees in terms of the resolution of this. It hasn't worked. Do you think we're going to see now a different strategy over the next 6 months?
Yeah, well, I hope so. I think the RMT leadership didn't play their cards very well. I think that the reality is they needed a concerted piece of industrial action to bring this day ahead, and I hope that they actually use those tactics. I think the membership really deserve better. They need to have this settled, and the only way to settle it is this concerted piece of industrial action.
OK. Steve Headley, formerly of the RMT, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, let us know what you make of that and what Steve was saying there. Almost a year into this dispute, no sign of it ending anytime soon. How are you feeling? Would you like to just see everybody get round the table and thrash it out? Is it not as simple as that? Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Perhaps you've got tickets to Eurovision and you can't go.
Yeah, it's all very, very irritating, but maybe they've all got a point. Now, are you about to get up, make a cup of tea, make some toast for your adult child living at home? They're 25, 26, and you still got to make them breakfast? The number of adults living with their parents is surging. So we're asking, should parents keep their chicks in the nest for longer or kick them out and see if they fly? This is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:33. Good morning to you. Watching to breakfast. You're watching to breakfast. You're watching and listening to breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Watching to breakfast.
Oh, I have no idea.
People
what
could
I'm
be
saying.
watching their breakfast. They could be watching their toast and popping up as we speak.
Good. Popping up right now.
Yeah, lots of families could be making breakfast right now. Kids, parents.
All together.
All together, exactly, because 1 in 10 adults aged between 30 and 34 still live at home.
What would you want? I love my parents dearly. I mean, really, really love them. You know, we get on
Really
so
love
well.
them.
We get on so well, but I wouldn't want to live there.
No.
Figures show the number of people living at home soared by 15%, nearly 5 million between 2011 and 2021. Is that all down to house prices? Maybe.
Yeah, well, 21-year-old Chloe Kerfoot is still living with her parents and says she will move out when she can afford to and when she's ready.
Meanwhile, there she is, and meanwhile, broadcaster and mum of four Claire Muldoon says children should stand on their own 2 feet rather than rely on their parents. Good morning to you both. Chloe, why are you still at home?
Morning. I'd probably say I'm still at home because it works. Obviously, I did a digital marketing apprenticeship and I've been working for the last 3 years. So as a 21-year-old, you know, money's good, but I wouldn't necessarily think that I could live and have a good life as a young 20-year-old whilst moving out of the family home, especially with the cost of living crisis, and obviously homes are so expensive now.
But Chloe,
I'm happy at home.
can I ask you, what do you mean by living a good life?
You know, just like I'm 21. You know, I see it as I should be able to go out with my friends and, you know, maybe go on some holidays and buy nice things that I'd like. And I know obviously if I was to live away from home and want to try do those things, I'd probably struggle quite a bit. I'd probably be living with not a right lot.
Claire, what do you make of Chloe's situation?
Well, whilst I sympathise completely, Chloe, with your situation, I've got 4 children ranging between 19 and 25. None of them live at home at the moment. I've got 2 at university in the north and one's in Australia and one's in Belfast. What I would say to you, though, is that the sooner you go out, the sooner you leave your own family home, the better. Because, you know, it's stages of development. It's better for your parents. They'll move on to their next section of their lives, or your mother, your father, whoever you're living with, and it's actually better for you. I think that you would build up more resilience. You're on an apprenticeship, that's fantastic. You've clearly earned good money, as you say. But I think, you know, your parents aren't your friends. They're your parents. And whilst I think it's fantastic that you want to be with them, I think for you, in terms of independence, it would be much better for you if you weren't to live with them. And I think you would develop skills. I think it's great for young people to live together. I think it's great for them to go out together. I think you know, you learn so much through budgeting, through resilience, through being able to go in and out, become independent, because you are the basis of society. It's your shoulders that is going to bear the brunt of us in old age. And I think the skills that you learn, not living at home, will be fantastic, not only for you, but for the future of society.
What do you think, Chloe?
Yeah, there is a lot I can agree with. You know, I think in the future I'd love to move out, but at the moment I'm happy currently. But we'll see what happens. Like, I'm saving money. I'm not just throwing it all away on paying for holidays and clubs. But at the moment I'm happy. My parents are happy to have me. You know, I see my friends, and my friends are in the same situation. They're all happy at home. We're all the same age. We're all in good jobs. So I work in marketing, my friend works as cabin crew, my other friend's about to go into law, but we're all still at home with his families. And we've all said the same thing, like in the future we'd love to move out, but right now it works currently.
So, I mean, what's wrong with that, Claire? If it works and if the parents are happy, then why shouldn't people stay at home?
I'll tell you what, well, they can. No one's saying they can't. What I'm saying is it would be better if they didn't, because people change. You know, there's changes, different levels of change in different ages when you go through life. And it's really important. You know, you've got a lovely set of friends there, Chloe, and you've got a lovely northern accent. I'm guessing it's Lancashire. You know, and you could, why don't you all just live together? Eh?
Yorkshire.
Yorkshire. Oh, sorry, the Cardinals.
Oh,
really sorry. However, you know, I think it'd be great for you. Can you cook? Do you cook? What are your table times like? You could still have a great relationship with your parents if you were just to dip in and dip out. And I think it was Agatha Christie, this is one of my favourite quotes, in fact, who said, the happiest days of a mother's life are the days the children come back, but the next happiest day is the day that they leave. And I think for 2-week breaks, for summertime, for weekend breaks, for Sunday lunch, it's great to come round. But I think, especially for your generation, you Gen Zers, you need to build resilience. And I don't think that you can build it whilst living with the home comforts that you're clearly experiencing. Can I just ask, Chloe, do you... Sorry, Stephen. Do you actually cook for your parents? Do you do any household chores? Do you pay rent?
In terms of cooking, I can cook for myself, but my food isn't as good as my mum's, and my mum has a different diet to us. So she eats quite a lot of corn and fish, where we're all meat eaters in the house. So my mum will cook our meat food for us, but she'll make her own food.
Gosh, your mum's a saint.
She's a trained cook, so she cooks really good food. But we all cater for ourselves in terms of making us own breakfast, making us own dinners, you know, getting through the day. But my mum tends to do a nice cooked meal on an evening, and we'll all sit down as a family and eat together.
So what difference do you think living with your mates would have to your life? What impact would that have? And then think what impact not living at home, in the family home, would actually have on the rest of your family?
I think if I were to live with friends, I've always said this to my parents, like, when the time comes when I do move out, like, I will cope. Everyone seems to think, like, our age group, we're classed as the snowflake generation and that we're not going to cope when we move out. But like I've said, I'll just get on with it like it's life, and, you know, I'll face the challenges as they come when it comes to doing your own washing and your own ironing and your own cooking and, you know, just all the tasks that we see at home. Like, I help out with quite a lot of it already. Like, I'll help my mum with the washing. I do a lot of the beds. I tidy up around the house. I do the dishwasher. You know, I just help in general. But obviously, when it comes to the things like cooking, that's one of the things that I kind of step away from. That's kind of one of my mum's things. My dad says he wishes that my mum would do a lot more cooking with me to show me how. And like I've said, I said when the time comes, when I do move out, like I'll manage and I'll probably pick it up and learn it on.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah,
but there's no time like the present.
There you go.
I'm quite excited.
You're being pushed out the door by Claire.
Out you go.
Look, Chloe, Claire, thank you both very much indeed. Good to get your views on that one. I think you may have persuaded Chloe to move out. But you know, it's a new stage of life. Yeah. It is a new stage of life, and actually, you'll reach a point where you think, I don't know how I lived at home. As much as you love them.
I don't know that one thing we didn't get onto there, which is what I would have liked to have asked Chloe next, is I just don't... for this generation now, so the 21-year-olds now, it is so difficult, especially if you're on apprenticeship salary, to even rent. I mean, it's 50%, 75% of your salary. So if you've got parents who want you at home, happy to have you at home, and it works for you, why would you give up 75% of your salary at that age?
But it's what I used to do when I was first working in radio and had a flat in Nottingham. I mean, to be fair, my mum used to send me £10 a month because I'd spent all my money went on rent. And £10 a month was a bit more back then in the 90s. But it was...
got you a bit further.
Yeah, got me a bit. But, I really struggled.
Yeah.
But then as you get older, it gets better and easier and you earn more money and all the rest of it. So I don't know. I'm all for it, a bit of independence. But let us know what you think.
Yeah, let us know what you think. GBviews@gbnews.uk. My mum didn't want me to move out.
Didn't she?
Loved having us all at home. Yeah,
she's mad, though, isn't she?
She's mad. Crackers. Yeah, crackers. She'll be watching now. Hi, Mum.
Yes, morning.
Stay with us. We're going to discuss why 10 NHS trusts are being blamed for half of the patient backlogs. Sean McDonald and Candice Holdsworth are going through the papers with us next. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Time for the papers this morning, which I shouldn't say, I don't like saying that. But here's a picture, a dramatic picture, actually. I think it's dramatic. Anyway, it's RAF crews loading missiles. This is in the Express this morning after the UK confirmed it's supplying Ukraine with longer-range weapons, Storm Shadows, that are going to help with the fight against invading Russian forces.
A very tense-looking Andrew Bailey is on the front cover of the Financial Times this morning. The Bank of England governor spoke at a press conference following the UK's central bank's decision to raise interest rates to 4.5%. He does look stressed, doesn't he?
Now, here's a picture of a royal superfan. Not as you'd expect, though. Doesn't look... the royal superfans we normally have are... sort of wearing Union Jack coats and things, aren't they? But this is
hats and badges.
A different royal superfan who actually, you can see from the picture on the right there, was arrested at the Coronation because she was stood next to some Just Stop Oil protesters and was arrested and dragged away and missed the whole thing.
13 hours she was held for, yes. The Telegraph has a fantastic photo of singer Mae Muller performing. She is, of course, our entrant to the Eurovision Song Contest. She's going to represent us tomorrow at the final in Liverpool. She looks good in pink.
Well, don't you all?
Well, I look like Calpol.
Calpol.
According to Tony.
It's Calpol special. Let's talk through some of the papers then with host of Blethered, the podcast, Sean McDonald, and writer and commentator Candice Holdsworth. I've got to stop saying Candice. I always say Candice.
Candice.
It's fine. I am so used to it. And it's much better if I just let it go. Than constantly being like, Candice.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I know I've mentioned it to you before and I still do it.
Don't worry about
it. Sorry, I
go.
told you too, Candice. Sorry.
Let's have a look at the Telegraph, Candice. Just 10 NHS trusts are responsible for 50% of patient backlogs.
Yeah, so this story is in the Telegraph, and I thought it was interesting because we obviously hear about the backlog, but actually it's good to kind of dig deeper and find out what's going on there. And it emerges that actually it's certain trusts which are not doing well. So many are actually managing their waiting list just fine. But one trust that was mentioned in this piece, Manchester University Trust, they have a huge number of patients waiting more than 18 months for things like hip and knee replacements. So I think that this is good because then we can apply scrutiny to those trusts and the chief executives of those trusts. So instead of just like talking about, we're going to eliminate the backlog and, you know, in big generalist terms, actually find out what's going on in these individual trusts.
Why can't you put them in if they know the trust is doing really badly, can't they put them in special measures?
Exactly. That's what we need. I think more scrutiny needs to be applied to the management of these trusts and exactly what are they doing and why are things going so wrong in these particular places? Why are some able to manage it better and why some aren't?
What should be done then to those 10 NHS trusts? Is it more funding? Is it just more scrutiny? What do you think?
Different management.
Different management?
Different management is probably a huge one, and I think one of the big problems is workforce planning. This is what everyone says who works in the NHS. I mean, there was a story a few weeks ago about how surgeons are only working maybe once a week, whereas previously they'd be working every day or a couple of times a week. We've got such a staff shortage right now, and obviously the strikes are making it worse. And it's something that needs to be rectified if you're going to get this waiting list down, because the surgeons are there, they want to perform the operations, and they can't.
Yeah.
OK. Sean, let's have a look at The Guardian, shall we? And this is a senior Tory has condemned Liz Truss. This is about a trip to Taiwan.
Yeah, this is Alicia Kearns. She's the Conservative chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. She has called Liz Truss's sort of seemingly inexplicable trip to Taiwan as performative and not substantive, a sort of Instagram diplomacy, she's calling it. I think it is pretty cut and dry that it's just an attempt to stay relevant after obviously a very brief spell as a Prime Minister. But I think this probably will cause issues for the Taiwanese people. It is a self-governing democracy, but it's obviously viewed as a renegade province by Beijing. And after the visit of Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the US House of Representatives in August last year, the Taiwanese people are now living with a heightened or increased military presence, you know, in their streets and their homes. If I was Rishi Sunak, I would be seriously reining her in, because that could be harmful to British-Chinese diplomatic relations, as it is, which are on what we would call in Scotland a sugarly peg.
On a what?
A sugarly peg, or a shaky nail, you would say here in England. Yeah, so I would be reining her in, big time.
Yeah, I tend to agree on that, really. I think more harm than good in
But
that
isn't it important, though, playing devil's advocate, isn't it important that we show support to Taiwan?
Yeah, I think it is important, especially, you know, I think China probably what they're looking with a very watchful eye over the reaction, the global reaction to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. People are maybe looking and thinking that could set a precedent. But if it's important to show support to the Taiwanese people, but not a former PM trying to make herself stay relevant, is basically would be my summation of it.
We've run out of time. We've rattled on a bit too much. Not you two, but before we got to you, I think. Sean, Candice, thank you. We'll catch you a little bit later on, though. Now, also today, rail passengers face disruption because of strikes by train drivers and other workers in those long-running disputes over pay. Members of ASLEF walking out today, members of RMT walking out tomorrow. That's the day of the Eurovision Song Contest final in Liverpool, of course.
As we're just hearing, a royal fan who was arrested and detained for 13 hours said she had a shocking experience while she was held in custody. She was arrested as she stood near eco-protesters on the day of the King's coronation. She's now calling on police to put new processes in place to prevent a repeat of the incident.
And astronomers led by the University of Southampton have spotted the largest cosmic explosion ever seen. It lasted more than 3 years, was 10 times brighter than any known supernova. OK, time for some showbiz this morning. Stephanie Tecci is back from her holidays. Good morning.
And you look ravishing.
Thank you so much.
Did you have the best time?
I had the best time. I feel so sun-kissed and relaxed.
Yes, the pictures on Instagram
I
were
was
very,
watching
very
you
good.
guys during the coronation.
Oh, stop, weren't
Look
you?
at my team, girl.
Yeah, it was very good. What have you got for us this morning? What's the key one?
Stephen Tompkinson.
Yeah.
He's had this court case hanging over his head over the past year. An intruder, Carl Paul, came to his house in Newcastle in the middle of the morning, and Stephen was woken up 5 a.m. in the morning. He came up to confront them. This guy, Carl Paul, he fell on the floor, and he then took Stephen to court for GBH, which he's now been found not guilty of. So this has been hanging over his head over the past year. He hasn't been able to do no acting work. He says all his associations in the acting industry has just been put on pause. So this is very much good news for him, but you know, it has been a very controversial case for him to face.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
At least it's whether things will get back on track now.
Yeah, and there was always this thing because the guy Carl, he suffered a double fractured to his skull, and he's saying that's because of, you know, Stephen slapping him across the face, which Stephen's always denied. He said, you know, I've been an actor for many years, so I know how not to, you know, be in contact with someone in that way. So I think it's still going to be quite a while till things are back on track.
We've also got a story about Eurovision, and Zelensky isn't able to make an address.
No, the EBU, which is the European Broadcasting Union, they've said that they would prefer for him not to make a speech because he feels like it's going to politicise the event, which I feel like is a bit too late. It's the elephant in the room. You know, the Eurovision should be in Ukraine this year, and it's not, obviously, due to the war in Russia. The event is all going to be about Ukraine, so I think it would have been a nice touch for Zelensky to be able to make a speech about what's going on.
He could have maybe done a non-political statement, though.
Yeah, I think he could have watered it down. He could have done a pre-record, and then they could have taken bits what they felt would be too political. The event is going to be heavily Ukrainian influenced. There's going to be about 11 acts who are going to be performing. Before each act performs on Saturday, there's also going to be a Ukrainian message. So it's going to be a Ukrainian affair. But the rules are the rules for the European Broadcast Union, and they do have to adhere to that.
Yeah, are you looking forward to it? Who's going to win?
I'm looking Austria.
You
Good
got-
stuff.
you're the same.
Good stuff. I was watching him last night. I was like,
Oh.
I think he's got it. He was perfect on stage. His song is catchy. Also, I think Cyprus, Andrew Lombard, he's quite.
Oh, I've heard that.
He's
yes.
quite a hunk, so I think he'll get all the votes. He'll get all the mamas.
Oh, there you go, all the mamas.
But I do think Austria will win. But I do think as well May Miller will do really well for
Do
it.
you?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
good-
I think she is. Like, her tune is quite catchy. I think it's just got those elements of a Eurovision song that we love. And I think she's a good performer. I think she's had a lot of controversy, but I think on the night she'll be able to pull in those votes.
Yeah, I think so too. Steph, thanks very much indeed. We're going to be talking to David Mellor very shortly on the government's plans to scrap EU laws. This is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock. It's Friday, the 12th of May. Today, the Prime Minister at loggerheads with his own party after U-turning on the government's pledge to scrap 4,000 EU laws still on UK statute books. Rail workers aren't running out of steam, though, as the strikes continue across the country. At 8:45, we'll talk to the Rail Minister as the government urges union members to reach a deal.
The UK has supplied Ukraine with long-range Storm Shadow cruise missiles. What are those weapons and what does this mean for the war? And the UK economy grew by 1.1% between January and March. That's according to the latest GDP figures that were out this morning. It comes as the Bank of England raised interest rates for the 12th time in a row.
You'll be very pleased to know there's still time to have your say in this year's Trick Awards. Breakfast is up for Multi-Channel News Programme of the Year.
And our very own Stephen Dixon is nominated for Best News Presenter. So you can cast your vote now by taking your phone up to that QR code on the screen. It takes you directly to the page, or you can go to trick.org.uk. But do get a wiggle on because votes close at 5 p.m. today, so you haven't got long.
No, you haven't. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
And as you can tell, David Mellor's here. Have you voted yet, David?
No, but I will vote for you. I seriously will.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
No.
And get a wiggle on, David.
I know. Well, nobody tells me about it. I'm old. I need to be helped.
I shall write the web address down for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, David is here because we want to talk about Kemi Badenoch, who's lashed out at Brexiteers after they accuse the government of U-turning on its promises to bin all EU law by the end of this year.
Yes, Tory backbenchers are angry at the climb down over the so-called post-Brexit bonfire pledge. But the business secretary hit back, saying they're all talk and no action.
So what does the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury make of it all, Mr Mellor?
Well, I think she's committing suicide, bless her.
Do you?
Well, yes, because, I mean, she breaks all the rules in the book. First of all, she says it's all her responsibility and nothing to do with the Prime Minister, which I thought was amazing. But also, look, Brexit. Okay, why did they come out of the EU? They came out of the EU because the argument is, and a lot of it is true, that the EU was full of red tape and that Britain was going to sail the oceans of the world free from all of this constraints put on by the EU. And she's saying, well, the constraints aren't so bad, and I'm not going to change too many of them. I mean, this is defiance. And I think, Kemi Badenoch is obviously bright, and she certainly has self-confidence. And, self-confidence can be a great thing. It can also, of course, be a destroyer of people's careers. And I think she's got too much self-confidence. But you see, if I was Rishi Sunak, hard to imagine myself in the role of a giant like him, but if I could imagine myself as Rishi Sunak, what would I be thinking over my marmalade this morning? That Kemi Badenoch's getting a bit too big for her boots.
How does it work in government, then? Is she doing this independently?
It would appear so. But, in my day, I'm an old man, in my day, they used to have, cabinet committees. But also, in my day, Mrs Thatcher had, and her enforcer, Bernard Ingham, would keep you in line. And the idea that, the bullying came about from cabinet ministers, I mean, Margaret Thatcher once almost literally pushed me up against a wall and with her face about a foot from mine told me where I was not doing what I ought to be doing. But, I might have resented that, although I was used to that kind of treatment from my mother. But basically, Margaret Thatcher ran the government, and nobody with any sense would try and take her on unless there was a large enough group of people that they could quietly point out to her that maybe she needed to change her mind. What I find extraordinary is the brazenness with which Kemi Badenoch said it was my decision, not the decision of the Prime Minister. That hasn't been picked up much in the papers, but that's what she said. And I think that Rishi Sunak has got to run a tighter ship. As for Kemi Badenoch, I was so impressed with her originally because, it's wonderful to have an intelligent, forthright woman from an African background. I mean, this is a gem for the Conservative Party. But she can't go on treating the Prime Minister, the Speaker, the House of Commons and her backbench colleagues with disrespect, because that way lies, I'm afraid, political death.
But for Rishi Sunak, you can also see why he would be happy for Kemi Badenoch to take responsibility for this and potentially take the fall for it as well, because for him, this is a massive U-turn on what he was pledging and pledging in the Tory leadership election.
You're so right. But can he get away with that? I don't think he can. Look, when the history of Brexit comes to be written, a lot of people took on the EU, which, and people who believe in the EU, I feel sorry for them. It's a bit like believing in a false god. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of what the Brexiteers had to say, because I'm in an interesting position. I neither like the EU nor most of the arguments of the Brexiteers. If the Brexiteers were saying and getting the votes of millions and millions and millions of people on the basis that there had to be a scrapping of these rules, you can't then say, well, I know that's what we said, but we didn't really mean it. And I think for Rishi Sunak, he's got two big problems. First of all, he will be thought to have got the merits wrong. But secondly, to allow Kemi Badenoch effectively to treat him with the same disdain that she's treating backbenchers, I mean, it once again suggests a government that is not properly disciplined. It's not running on established lines. And who sets the established lines? He's a gentleman called the Prime Minister. Look in the mirror, Rishi. You're the Prime Minister. Do something about it.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point, actually, isn't it? What I find quite interesting, Danny said the laws were approved by the EU, not us. Second, he says the civil service know that their jobs will go with AI. Well, that's another thing. Third, we could do the job in weeks, if not days, with the right stuff. But Danny's key first point is the important one. We're talking about laws. They may be part of our system now, but they weren't approved by us.
But Kemi Badenoch is basically saying, I'm adopting all of this stuff. And do you know the other extraordinary thing? I've been reading this and my hair has been standing on end about this, because the senior civil servant responsible for this administering, what laws stay and what don't, has been on long-term sick leave.
Oh.
So there's obviously a chair somewhere in Whitehall and probably also a nice, relaxing chair at this person's home, neither of which are occupied by someone who's doing the job. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Is there some truth then in Jacob Rees-Mogg's comments, who's been talking about the inability of Whitehall to do any necessary work and the incapability of ministers to push that work through? He says it's the triumph of the blob.
Well, the blob is after my time, but if what the blob means, a bunch of people who stick together for no better reason, and they've always run the show, and they're going to continue to run the show. I find this depressing because, the saddest thing you can be is somebody who says how much better things were in my day. And honest to God, I'm quite happy to sort of watch the football and appear with charming people on GB News and leave the big business of running the government to people who know far better than me how to do it. But every time I look at the papers, I am appalled. And I've rarely been more appalled than I am today, because Kemi Badenoch is riding for a fall. You cannot speak to the Speaker of the House of Commons in quite that way.
Yeah. While we've got you here, can I ask you about GDP figures? 0.1% increase in the last quarter. I mean, it's virtually flat, isn't it? What do we make of all of this?
And the idea that it may be fallen by 0.3%. Now that's
in March.
Yes, exactly. That's the thing. And that's why we're looking towards a recession. Now, we haven't. Do
you think we're still in that position?
Well, the figures will say, but if you have negative growth, you're in a recession, depending on how long that negative growth goes on for. And basically, you see, where we have the problem here is that this appears to be a competent government in terms of economic management, but they have to turn the figures around. And, of course, there comes an even more complicated moment, and that is, even if they turn the figures around, they won't get the benefit for it. I mean, I was a member of a government that was... I mean, John Major in 1997 lost, even though the economy was doing well. He lost because people were fed up with the Tories. Well, if you ask the voters, I mean, ask our viewers, a lot of whom, of course, will be Tories, but a lot of whom will be deeply disillusioned by what's happening. And they will wake up, as I sometimes do in the morning, and say, this is a nightmare. What's happening? Get a grip, somebody. Who is going to get a grip of this government,
Wow. David, good to see you. Don't wake up like that too often, because heaven knows what it'd do to the hair. Be honest.
Yes, the hair. But you and I are hairy people, and this is good,
Well...
Because was it... who was a hairy man, but his brother was a smooth man? This is the Bible.
I don't know. Is it in the Bible?
I don't know.
I had some of mine rearranged, David, so it's all a con.
No, but I tell you what, a very elegant con, which, I mean, unlike a lot of people who mess about with their hair, it looks even better close up. Flattery will get me everywhere.
Yes,
that's always been my hope. And I'm still waiting for it to happen.
You can come back tomorrow, David, for that one. Good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. It is 11 minutes past 8. Now, Russia has denied reports that Ukrainian forces broke through front lines, saying the military situation is under control. Comes after Russian military bloggers said Ukraine was making advances towards the city of Bakhmut, with some suggesting a counter-offensive by Ukrainian forces had started.
The consumer group Which has found that holidaymakers are being charged significantly more for summer car hire in popular destinations than before the pandemic. Research shows car hire fees are up 77% above 2019 levels due to high demand and depleted stock.
And this is a great story. Astronomers led by the University of Southampton have found the largest cosmic explosion ever seen. It's lasted more than 3 years, and it's more than 10 times brighter than any known supernova. What it is, no idea.
But it looks cool. You love a space story, don't you?
Yes, and what I haven't seen the raw data on that one, so I don't know if it's if it lasted for 3 years or if it's still ongoing. Well, I say it's still ongoing. It'll have happened thousands upon thousands of years ago. We're just seeing it now.
Oh.
That's how it all works, isn't it? So I think it's all just bits of history. You look back into time when you look into space.
We should get someone on to talk about that at some point this weekend.
Well, maybe we shall.
We'll have a chat and a meeting after this.
Oh, will we?
I think that would be fun.
So bossy.
I think it'll be good. Well, you like it, don't
bossy.
you?
Oh, well, I like it.
love a
Doesn't mean
little
you like it.
Space segment. I don't know, it gets people talking. Lots of you talking this morning. Thank you so much for all of your emails that you're sending in. On Coronation arrests, Jason says, everyone is complaining about these protesters being arrested before committing a crime, but no one has a problem with people being arrested for going equipped, even though they haven't burgled a house yet, he says.
Yes. Oh, no, fair point. I was just driven by this disgruntled Paula in Sheffield. Talking about the rising cost of living. I've just woken up to an email from the kennels I use for my dog. I have to use them every 6 weeks because of business trips. They shut because of COVID. Before that, they were £17 a night. Now they're £31 a night. Wow. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
For Timmy, it's about... Timmy.
So cute.
You see, that's a cattery, so it's cheaper, but it's about £7, £8 a night.
That's reasonable.
So £31 a night?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big dent in your money if you've got to go away to work.
But she's right, isn't she? We talk about food, we talk about mortgages, but it's everything that's going up. I mean, I went to a car wash the other day, and it was something like £10 for an in-and-out job, not like an intensive one, but, you know, just a quick hoover and a wash. And now it's like 25 or something.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, isn't it?
Do it yourself. Get the hoover out.
Well, yeah. Or don't wash
Get a duster
it
out. Oh, yeah.
You do it yourself.
Do it yourself.
For that money. Crazy.
Anyway, one thing you can't do yourself is drive a train, sadly, because more train services are being hit by industrial action this weekend. Members of ASLEF striking today, RMT tomorrow, in a long-running dispute with some lines providing no services at all.
Well, the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, accused both unions of targeting the Eurovision Song Contest final in Liverpool, as thousands of fans are due to visit the city.
Let's get the latest from our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire. Morning, Tony. What's going to be the situation north of the border?
Good morning. Well, I'm outside one picket line in Scotland, one of three, the other two being at a rail depot on the south side of Glasgow and another over in Edinburgh outside Waverley Station. Yes, as you say, this is a really bad weekend for anyone hoping to travel down to Eurovision in Liverpool this weekend. ASLEF, all trains that are running Avanti West Coast will not be running today, and there will be no replacement rail services. Tomorrow, as you say, it's RMT's turn, and certainly while Northern Rail is running some sort of Eurovision Express between Manchester Airport and Liverpool Lime Street, it doesn't really help the Scottish commuters who are hoping to get a train down and enjoy the weekend's festivities. Now, certainly these train strikes for the train drivers have been rumbling on since June last year, and the latest really from all three parties, Avanti West Coast has apologised and are asking Eurovision fans to reconsider their travel options. Seemingly the advice right now is to request a refund and find an alternative route if you're planning on travelling down. Avanti West Coast, of course, one of the main train providers that services from Scotland down to England and Northern Wales. However, this weekend the choices may be limited. Of course, Avanti West Coast is only one of 14 rail services that are going to be affected by these strikes. So everyone is advised to check their local timetables. For tomorrow, Secretary General Mick Lynch of the RMT has said that he's hoping that the public understand and that can actually feel that the huge anger amongst rail workers is extremely hard. and recognise the fact that changes need to be made. So certainly a lot of commuters are going to really struggle to cross over the border into England and indeed up to Scotland this weekend, and more strike dates have been announced for the start of June. So certainly I would imagine quite a lot of commuters will be giving the train companies nil pois for being unable to resolve this dispute in the 11 months that has passed since it began all the way back last summer.
Oh, very slick, Tony.
Very
slick. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Tony, and good advice there as well.
Oh, wink.
Oh, he got a wink.
Cheeky.
Oh, he's in a cheeky mood this morning.
Yes, nil point.
Quite right. Yeah, Janice has been in touch on the rail strike. She says it's shocking. They know that we are hosting Eurovision on behalf of Ukraine, and yet they still feel it's OK to disrupt it. The people of Ukraine need this and other displays of support to help keep them going. I'd love to see as many people as possible not returning to rail travel. Don't allow the unions to hold the public to ransom. Shame on them.
Yeah, but do you know what? Whereas I know exactly where you're coming from, and I sort of agree with you. The point is, there's no point holding a strike or a protest or anything else if it doesn't cause disruption. Otherwise, no one's going to care.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with all of this, isn't it? If you don't do it, no one's going to care.
They're just trying to get the government around the table, aren't they? And I think the way to do that is to disrupt.
If we had in this country a no travel day, where nobody travelled anywhere on a Sunday, and yet they put a strike on a Sunday, who's going to care?
Exactly.
It's not going to have any impact, is it? I mean, it is frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating. Anyway, talking of Eurovision...
Yes, the Eurovision Song Contest finale will be hosted in Liverpool tomorrow night after a competitive semi-final round.
Yes, our North West reporter, Sophie Reaper, is in Liverpool, soaking up the Eurovision fever. Let's hope so, Sophie. So what do we know about who's in the actual final now?
Good morning to you both. Yes, it was the semi-final last night. We're going into the grand final tomorrow. In terms of who's going through, 10 countries went through on Tuesday night, 10 countries went through last night, and then they'll be joined by the big five, so that's the UK, Germany, Spain, Italy and France. The reason they're the big five is because they're the countries who donate the most to the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, so they automatically get a place in the final. And they of course will also be joined by Ukraine because they won it last year, so they automatically also get a place. So there'll be 26 countries battling it out on Saturday night for that big win. Now, one of the really lovely parts of Eurovision this year, the tagline is United by Music, and of course that's because it may be being hosted in Liverpool, but it's on behalf of last year's winners, Ukraine, after Kalush Orchestra won it for them. And one of the really lovely parts is that, you know, you can really feel the support for Ukraine here in Liverpool. The atmosphere is just incredible. There's blue and yellow colours everywhere. Just to my left, there's a Crimean songbird representing Ukraine. I've been speaking to plenty of Ukrainian refugees who either have been able to get tickets through the scheme that was offered to them, or who've just come along to Liverpool to enjoy the atmosphere. I was speaking to one mother and daughter yesterday who were telling me what it means to have it hosted by Liverpool this year.
She likes Liverpool. Really, I think she loves Liverpool, especially in the evening. It's very cool place, beautiful sea and people, and M&S Arena too, and Eurovision, very cool, really very cool. Beautiful show. Thanks, England, for your support. Thanks, English people, for their support for Ukrainian people, for Ukraine, for Ukrainian soldiers.
I think that's one thing that everyone has been able to agree on so far. I've been speaking to people who are from the UK or are from other European countries. Yesterday, I was speaking to a lady from Australia who's come over from there, someone who's come over from Iceland. People have come from all over the globe to really soak up the Eurovision fever that's taken over Liverpool over the past few days.
OK, Sophie, thanks very much indeed. It is a bit baffling. Australia is part of the Eurovision Song Contest. They're performance number 15 tomorrow. Austria, who I think should win, are number 1. They're the first performance of the night. Now, that can be a bit of a poison chalice.
Get it.
The UK is the last act, 26.
Is that bad?
No. It's not, because
I feel like it is.
Because the voting doesn't happen until the last act has performed.
I see.
And so it'll be in people's minds. So actually, that's really good for the UK to be
Good
last.
news for May Miller.
They just pull it out of a hat, don't they? But there you go. Sweden, who are the favourites, actually, with Loreen, are number 9 in the performance.
I feel like you want to be a good middle. Australia's got it right, I think.
You always do really well. Often the last act wins.
Really?
Mm.
Well, I don't know if we can afford that 2 times.
No, we don't want to win because it'd be bad. It costs us a fortune.
May, we're sorry, but we want you to do well, but maybe not that well.
It's all about the money. Come second.
Yeah.
Be great.
Do us proud.
Yeah. Now, we're going to talk about a very difficult night for West Ham with Aidan McGee. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts of
Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:27, morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
And it's time for all the latest sport now with Aidan McGee. And a difficult night for West Ham, but they did win, didn't they?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say a difficult night. It was a difficult match in the sense that they didn't really show much form up until about the 65th minute, and then they kind of came alive after that. But this is what the new stadium, the London Stadium, was meant for, the big European nights that West Ham dreamed of hosting once again. They moved into that stadium, 2016, 4 years after the Olympics, and last night it was absolutely banged. It was really, hugely atmospheric. They were 1-0 down after 5 minutes before half-time, and then turned it round in the second half. Now, they haven't won a European trophy since 1965. They haven't won a major trophy since they won the FA Cup in 1980. There's still a second leg to come next week. It's not the top level of European football. It's probably the third trophy that you can win in Europe, and then, it was only introduced last season, so it's a little bit kind of embryonic, if you like. But nonetheless, I mean, fantastic for them to get the win. Declan Rice playing well. Two look to be set to win set to move on in the summer, it looks like. So it'd be nice for him to finish off. But as I say, they've still got plenty of work to do next week in the return leg in Holland. The RZ Alkmaar showed there were no mugs last night, that's for sure.
I mean, there was talk of David Moyes and lots of talk about him leaving, right, as manager. But surely if he wins a trophy now, he's safe.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, they've got the same problem as Crystal Palace have got with Roy Hodgson. Roy Hodgson was brought in as a short-term fix, but it looks like he might last into next season. Now, David Moyes, slightly different because he's been there 4 years. But, I mean, goodness me, the last 15 matches, they've won 8, lost 4 and drawn 3. As I say, trophies don't happen often, aren't won often at West Ham. It's been a hell of a long time. So 1965 was the last European one. So I don't think you can really sack someone after winning a European trophy. As I say, they've still got plenty to do. There is precedent for sacking a manager after a European trophy. Keith Birkinshaw lost his job at Tottenham back in 1984, having won the UEFA Cup trophy, and that was in the year when Tottenham were one of the first clubs in Europe to actually float on the stock exchange. And he famously said there used to be a football club over there, but that was different times. So I think it'd be very difficult. I mean, he shouldn't be mentioned for a departure anyway. I mean, he finished 6th and 7th 2 seasons running. He rescued them from relegation the season before that. In his first spell at the club back in 2017-18, he came in and did a firefighting job, kept them up, and then was seduced by the CV of Manuel Pellegrini, who went in having won the Premier League title with Manchester City, spent an absolute fortune and landed them in the bottom 3, and David Moyes had to go in and rescue them. So it's very unfair for him to be linked with a departure anyway. Some people say the football's a little bit turgid, a little bit difficult to watch. Having said that, I just don't think it'd be a very brave person to sack David Moyes if they won the trophy. But as I say, plenty to do yet.
Talking about winning anything, a bit of a blow for Arsenal in the Premier League.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Zinchenko's been one of the key players for Arsenal this season. So Manchester City last summer sold them 2 players, Gabriel Jesus and Alexander Zinchenko. Weakened Manchester City a little bit, even though they brought in Erling Haaland. But those 2 have sustained Arsenal for most of the season, and he sustained a calf injury last Sunday with the win at Newcastle. But yeah, it's a bit of a blow. Having said that, look, they're playing.
He's out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, but I've written a lot of these stories back in the day, out for the rest of the season. It's one thing to write that in September when there's 9 months to go, but when it's 3 games to go, it's not quite as bad as it sounds.
Yeah, no.
But they're playing Brighton on Sunday. They're 1 point behind Manchester City with having played a game more. So I do think the race is run, to be honest with you. I can't see Manchester City in the form they're in relinquishing any points. So it's not as crucial as it would have been if it happened, say, a month ago when they lost William Saliba, of course.
Yeah.
Should we look at the cricket? And England bowler Ollie Stone set to miss the first Ashes test.
Yeah, this is a real blow, Ellie, really. I mean, because Jofra Archer came back from the IPL just the other day, playing for the Mumbai Warriors. He'd played 5 test matches, taken 3 wickets, but he was the key to trying to get England back on course in terms of the Ashes. Remember, there was a humiliating defeat 18 months ago. Since then, under Brendan McCullum, they've really recovered, but Ollie Stone wasn't really somebody who was in the reckoning a short time ago. He was, until relatively recently, he's only has 3 caps for England. But when you look at the pace attack, losing him to an elbow injury, or a hamstring injury rather, is a real blow, because it just diminishes England's bowling options. And as I say, they've made such progress between the last Ashes defeat. We spoke about it on here, didn't we? 18 months ago, England were humiliated, literally. I think there was a 5-0 whitewash or a 4-1 or something like that. But as we look ahead to the Ashes this summer, it had been the chance for England to reassert themselves at that level, but doing it without two key players now is going to be very difficult.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the darts.
Love a bit of arrows, don't we?
Well, I tell you what, though, darts, I love a bit of darts. Not watching it particularly, because it's a bit strange, but to play it...
You're good.
I mean, I'm rubbish. But there's something absolutely sort of fascinating about...
Yeah, the flights.
When you actually do get it in the board, it's quite good, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, Michael Smith played the Premier League darts last night. Now, he's also the world champion, but the Premier League, just like in football, as opposed to the World Championship, is a one-off event which takes place over a period of like 2 weeks around Christmas and New Year. But the Premier League is where you prove your consistency. And that was devised back in, 2006. I think I was kind of involved in covering it back then, and we weren't really sure if it was going to take off. But he's won 3 nights in a row, and he's beaten Michael van Gerwen, Johnny Clayton and Gerwyn Price. He's 32, he's not young, but he's also the first... He's the only guy to...
Yes, he is.
He's young.
Watch it.
Actually, I suppose darts players go on a little bit later.
Yeah, they do.
But because the fitness is more important now, because they're playing under such intense lights and under intense pressure, the average age of a champion has come down a little bit. But yeah, a great win for him last night in Sheffield. And, I think when someone wins the Premier... or, does well in the Premier League and is also a world champion, that's usually a sign they're going to dominate for a little while. And at 32, he's in a really good age to try and do that now. And he's from St Helens as well, which is good darts.
What do we know what you want? Is there a range of prizes?
Yeah.
In one, in two.
Well, do you remember the bloke? Well, he's known as Bully Boy. That's his nickname. But do you remember on Bullseye, it was always the person who lived in Birmingham who won the speedboat.
Won the speedboat, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, win a speedboat.
It was the point that was furthest away from any sea.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Unbeatable.
It was a great show, and I remember when I worked in Nottingham, going on to Central TV in Nottingham, where they filmed it, and going onto the set.
They filmed it? Is that
that's where they filmed it. I snuck onto the set. It was like all TV sets.
Jim Bowen, wasn't it?
It's all stuck together with sticky tape and things, but there was a bully. Yeah. Under the little desk, where you used to stand and get it all out, and you be a mug with all your wadge.
I think as merchandise, you could put it. It's the sort of thing a truck driver would have just in front of his steering wheel.
Oh yeah.
It would say something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That was a great show. Back in the day, got people watching darts.
Of course it did, yeah.
Lovely stuff. Aidan, thank you very much.
Nice to see you. See you over the weekend.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Are you going to be in Eurovision? Are you going to be watching that tomorrow?
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. I'm professional. I like to get to bed early. That's the thing. If I've got a show the next day.
Oh yeah, right.
Well, we're seeing you tomorrow, aren't we?
Indeed.
Lovely stuff,
chat to
Aidan.
you then,
Thank you. Now, we're going to ask if AI is going to have a major impact on diagnosing heart attacks. It's one of the stories in the papers with Sean McDonald and Candice Holdsworth.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sorry, I was lost for words there. If you're listening on the radio, probably the best thing is if you're on TV, you have to turn the brightness down this morning because Ellie's wearing a very, very, very bright pink dress.
I am.
Daz has been in touch saying, because someone else earlier on said it looked like medicine. I said, I think the reference to the dress colour of medicine was actually not Calpol, but about liquid penicillin that we used to have as kids.
Oh.
It was either that dreadfully tasting fluid or the banana one, which was equally vile.
I remember the banana one.
Do you? I remember the pink one. I used to like the flavour of that.
You're a bit odd.
I am a bit odd, yeah. Yeah, there you go. But
So that's what was distracting you?
Penicillin, that's what I was thinking of.
penicillin.
That's why I forgot to speak, ladies and gentlemen, which is a burden in this job.
I don't know what's worse, Calpol or penicillin. Don't know, but thank you for your thoughts.
There you go. It's nice.
And Barry says he thinks Calpol is fantastic, so that's nice.
There you go. Thank you. Let's have a look at some of the best pictures in the papers this morning. Here's one of RAF crews loading missiles after the UK confirmed it's supplying Ukraine with these longer-range Storm Shadow missiles for the fight against Russian forces. That's in the Express.
A very tense-looking Andrew Bailey is on the cover of the Financial Times this morning. The Bank of England governor spoke at a press conference following the UK's central bank's decision to raise interest rates to 4.5%.
Here's a royal superfan on the front of the Times, looking very nice on the left-hand picture, but not so happy in the other one, because she was arrested at the Coronation after being stood beside some eco-protesters.
And The Telegraph has a fantastic photo of the singer Mae Muller performing in a lovely pink ensemble.
Yeah, she's not really penicillin. She's more strawberry angel delight.
Marshmallow, I would
say.
Yes, very good. Now, she is representing the UK tomorrow in Eurovision Song Contest final in Liverpool.
And her chances just went up because she's last. She's the last one to perform, number 26.
And these things matter.
Which is good, yeah. Traditionally, it's only people in the latter half who tend to win. There's been the odd one, but there you go.
He's very across it, you know. He knows his stuff.
I've been Googling it.
He knows his stuff.
Let's talk to the host of Blethered Podcast, Sean McDonald, and the writer and commentator, Candice Holdsworth. Good to see you both once again this morning. Let's have a look at this. I love a bit of AI. In the Times, Candice, it could be very good for our health.
Yes, so this is such a great story because there's always so much doom about AI, but this is actually something where AI could be incredibly useful. It's in diagnostics. So the NHS has an AI lab and they have been funding research into how it could be used to screen for heart attacks, breast cancer, lung cancer, various sorts of things where the costs are very high to diagnose, and it could bring the cost down. And in this particular instance, they found that it was actually very good in diagnosing heart attacks, and it could ease pressure on emergency departments. Yeah. So it's actually very useful. I was listening to a podcast with the founder of OpenAI, Sam Altman, and he was saying it could have a transformative effect in this particular area. I mean, you think about things like dementia as well. You know, we could maybe get to the point where you could have universal dementia screening quite early because the cost is low.
Yeah.
So that's a really good use of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Could make a huge difference, actually.
And Sean, it is nice, isn't it, to hear a positive story about AI, as Candice was touching upon there. You do often hear the doom and gloom surrounding AI.
Absolutely. You know, I've spent this morning going on about how people should be subject to fair trial, how we should have democracy, but I would honestly love to throw every AI developer in jail if we could just stop the rapid acceleration of it, because it freaks me out. But it is great to see. Honestly, I would jail them. I'm like, stop.
But then you miss out on this.
No, but yeah, this is a definite.
So you'd like it in hospitals?
Yes, absolutely. I think that obviously I say that in jest and my tongue firmly in my cheek, but it is a very positive outcome. But let's contain it, let's confine it for this type of use. But please, let's stop it going any further than that, 'cause it's terrifying me.
Interesting. You know, there's only one reason that Ellie asked you that, and I know her too well. It's because she didn't want to ask you about the story that you've picked, son, about Rishi Sunak and raunchy erotic novels.
Yes, this has come out, I think, in The Spectator, basically saying that Rishi Sunak likes to let off. Look at Ellie's blush. Ellie's going the same colour as her dress,
I've got the same colour as my
she?
dress, my God.
It's
too early for this.
That's how Rishi Sunak likes to unwind, by reading raunchy fiction.
Right.
So I think this is really funny. Apparently his favourite book is Jilly Cooper's 1985 romp. The Sun are calling it Riders. I think a bit of a double entendre there. I think his spokesman has said that, they don't actually... they said that's never come up in conversation. When I read it, I thought, this is 100% some sort of dead cat story.
But when you read Riders?
No, I mean, I've read it so many times that it's ingrained in my memory. But yeah, no, I don't. I think this is possibly a distraction tactic.
The problem is with all these sort of books, and they're very, very, very popular, is that I remember my grandma, who was born in 1908, and when she was well into her 80s, and she'd send me down the library to go and pick up another Mills and Boon. Could you get one about doctors and nurses? Because I like the doctors and nurses. It's fine. It used to get them in large print.
Did you have to read it?
No, I never thought anything about it. Here's your book, Grandma. Here's your book, Grandma. And then I've then since met a lady called Sharon Kendrick who writes these books. Right. And so she sent me some of hers. I cannot believe what my grandma was reading.
Honestly.
Because they are proper raunchy.
Well, and Rishi Sunak's got such a straight-laced image.
I mean, he's a straight-laced image, but he's as bland as porridge, man. Like, he's beige, he's vanilla. If it was a day, it would be Tuesday. So do you know, this is probably the type of thing he'd be doing, you know? Disappearing, locking the toilet for 10 minutes and getting his wee novel out. Just to have a wee read, obviously, in privacy.
Well... Let's have a look at Elon Musk, should we? There's going to be a new boss of Twitter, and it's a woman, but that's as much as we know.
Yes, so that's all we know. So this story is basically Elon Musk doing what he does best, tweeting. And he has said that in 6 weeks there'll be a new CEO of Twitter, and he said it's a she, but he hasn't said anything more than that. But apparently Tesla stocks have risen off the back of this announcement because everyone thinks he's spreading himself way too thinly at the moment.
But last time he said there was a new CEO of Twitter, it was a dog.
But this is the thing, right? You can't take him too seriously. You got to take him with a pinch of salt, you know, who knows? There could be someone on the way, there might not be, you know?
He trolls us all, doesn't he?
Oh, he does. Yeah, he does.
Joys.
He does. He's very idiosyncratic, which I suppose is his strength, but it's also a weakness if you're running lots of businesses as well. So, we'll see. It would be... I think Twitter does need a period of stability now. I suppose you've had him come in, move fast, break things, and now you need someone who's going to actually run it and manage the thing properly.
Refix it again.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Sean.
Here you go. It's another one for you, Sean.
Yeah.
By the way, can I momentarily divert proceedings just to point something out? You know, you were talking about penicillin.
Yeah.
You know, it was discovered one street away from
it was, yeah.
Yeah, round the corner
Was
by
it?
Alexander Fleming. I saw the sign last night, took my wee picture.
Yeah,
Put it on my silly little Instagram to show my pals.
Yes, by...
Pretty fascinating.
It's by is it St Mary's?
What, in the hospital?
St Mary's, yeah. Yeah, that's what it was.
It was, yeah, just a little room just about half a mile from here, if that. Yeah.
If that, God, a stone's throw away. But yeah, this story, by the way, so we've got Britain's first driverless bus service was given its its test run. It went from, I think, from Fife to Edinburgh, 14 miles, with a safety driver on board. Pretty fascinating that we're at the point you can have a driver. It's a real step into the future, but...
Does this scare you, or is this all right?
I mean, it scares me a wee bit. I'd rather there was a driver and someone to react. But I would also point out as well, we're talking about how we could see a decrease in interest rates if we had 400,000 more people in work. This is taking jobs away from people.
Not if you've got to have a supervisor on board.
So why even have him then? Just let the guy drive it. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's put this thing and we'll have someone supervise the robot. Just do it yourself, man.
Well, yeah, I think there's an element of that.
If I was holding my hand out for the bus and I saw there was no driver, I'd be like, it's all right, mate, I'll get the next one. I'll just wait until there's someone actually driving.
Well, it'd be fine. It's not good if you hold your hand out. It's not going to see you. It's not going to stop, is it?
How else would you get? Oh, well.
You must have to press a button or something.
Yeah, you need to do something. No, I'll give it a miss. I think I'll wait for a driver.
I get your point, though, 'cause with the driverless cars, you know, you are still meant to sit there and be focused so you can take over. So I thought you could be on your phone or be doing your makeup or reading a book or something, and you can't. So what's the point?
Yeah.
Might as well be driving, right?
Yes, exactly.
'Cause you just have to sit there like you're driving, but you can't.
No.
Yeah, I would rather drive it then.
Yeah, you've probably got to have your hand on the wheel or something to show that you're...
Well, that's the point.
Engaged.
Well, yeah, but these things will all take us steps in the right direction at some point.
Can we have 30 seconds on Penny Mordaunt?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So this story, this is in the Mirror. It's about how Penny Mordaunt managed to hold the sword of offering aloft for as long as she did. Very impressive. She said she took painkillers beforehand, which is how she managed it. I thought this was really interesting because, I mean, everyone was saying, how did she do that? Was she doing, like, push-ups and her triceps really strong? But I think you'd have to have painkillers if you were going to be in a stiff position like that for as long as she was, although I'm sure the adrenaline carried her through. Can you imagine that? You'd be like, don't drop the sword, don't drop the sword, don't drop the sword.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, good on her.
Do you know what I love about this is it's still rolling on. Like, this story has totally run away with itself.
Oh,
we were talking about her push-ups last week, weren't we, and her gym routine, and now it's on to the painkillers.
Yes.
Well, good on her. She did a good job.
Great.
She looked amazing.
She did a good job. We've got to leave it there. Candice, Sean, thank you both very much indeed.
Very much.
We've got to move on, which is not what's going to be happening on the rails today or tomorrow. It's ASLEF today on strike, looking at no train services at all across large parts of the country. Let's talk to Hugh Merriman, who's the Minister of State for Rail. Good morning to you. I mean, this is horrific for people, isn't it? Is the government doing enough, or is it, as we've heard from one of our guests this morning, really tying the hands of the rail operating companies when it comes to negotiations?
No, not at all. We have been able to facilitate an offer which has been put to the union leaders. The problem we've got is that they won't put it forward to their members. Similar offers have been put forward to other members of unions and they've accepted them. So logic would dictate if the union leaders did the same, we could see an end to this action. And I'm really sorry for all passengers who have been disrupted today.
Where are we at with the negotiations, though? When was the last time that you met with the unions, and when are you next planning on meeting with them?
So myself and Mark Harper, the Secretary of State, have met with union leaders just to facilitate and say, look, what more do we need to do with you and to the employers who are also in the room with us, and then they go off and do their negotiations. That's culminated in a deal which we felt would be good enough to be tabled. Interestingly, Mick Lynch's union, the RMT, on the Network Rail side, they did put that deal to the members. 76% of them who voted to accept it, so that's the end of the industrial action on Network Rail. But he won't do the same when it comes to those who work on the trains, and that's a disappointment, particularly with a weekend coming up with Eurovision, the FA Cup final. It feels like events have been targeted deliberately to really impact people the most, and it's really regrettable on Eurovision, which we're hosting for our friends in Ukraine.
Well, of course, but I mean, to be fair, I know this keeps coming up, but of course they're impacting the big events, because that's how they make their point.
Well, then they have to take responsibility for doing that. And it's not good enough for them to say they didn't realise that the events were on, which is what we've been hearing this morning from Mick Whelan, because either he doesn't have a very good sporting and cultural diary, or once he was told, he could have changed the dates so they didn't impact. I mean, Eurovision is a great celebration. We should be really proud to host that. I know that our coach companies and others will step up in the absence of trains, but you know, the trains should be running. This is a really sort of important day for us, and I'm really disappointed. As I say, if I hadn't facilitated an offer that was ready to be put forward to the workers, then fair enough, I'd take responsibility, but I've done the opposite. It's there, it just needs to be put to the members, and then they can have their say.
All right, well, why is it then that Mick Whelan has said they're in a worse position now in terms of the negotiations than they were 6 months ago?
Well, look, your viewers can decide. At the moment, a train driver is paid an average of just shy of £60,000 for a 35-hour week. This offer would take them up to £65,000. Bear in mind they've had pay rises of near 40% since 2011. It doesn't sound to me as if it's an unreasonable thing to put to their members and see if they wish to accept it. So he will say that because he just doesn't want to justify why he's not putting forward the offer to the members. Obviously things are in a better place because an offer's there for him. It wasn't there before. He just won't put it.
I mean, many people just want to see an end to this dispute now. Been going on for 11 months, almost a year now. Where are we at with the minimum service level bill and the progress that that's making? Because that closes in 3 days, doesn't it? And that would allow a minimum service level during strike days.
Yeah, look, it's really important. During COVID, we made sure that the railways worked because we said that essential workers had to get to work. That remains the case right now. So we're committed to this minimum service level legislation. You're right, our consultation on rail closes next week. The idea is to get a minimum service table of legislation put together during the course of this year, which means that if there are strikes, then trains will have to run a certain percentage of the time. So at least that will give passengers a chance to use their trains, which is going to be very difficult to do today.
Can I ask you on a different matter, but obviously it's getting a lot of attention, is this, you know, the bonfire of the EU legislation which we were promised by Rishi Sunak, which now doesn't seem to be happening, according to Kemi Badenoch, who seems to have taken it upon herself to decide that none of this is going to go ahead now. What do you make of that?
Well, what I make of that is that 45% of the EU legislation will be taken down, 15% will be retained because they're sort of part of conventions, so Civil Aviation Authority, at least 40% that we'll have to pick through. We will end the EU supremacy principle by the end of the year. We have looked through the legislation for the first 100 days of the Prime Minister's reign, as he said. But what we're focused on is, rather than just spend the time looking at the 40% and sort of legislating off it, why not reform it? Why not make it better? Wasn't Brexit all about the opportunities? And by reforming the remaining 40% that will be there and making it even better, it's a better use of our time. We're talking about matters like rail reform, minimum service legislation. All of that needs our internal lawyers to deal with. It's a struggle for them to deal with a sort of sunset clause that just takes all EU laws down that are in our statute book, some of which we may want to keep. We'd rather focus on reform and delivering the reform that I've just been talking about.
But I mean, David Mellor, who was on the show earlier on, who said he was, you know, in the leadership contest and all the rest of it, was quite a big fan of Kemi Badenoch, says she's getting out of her box now. She's embarrassing the Prime Minister. She's going above her station.
Well, no, look, every single proposal, change, policy gets signed off by the Prime Minister. He's at the top and we all respect him. So, you know, this will be a matter that the Prime Minister will have discussed with Kemi Badenoch. The change was made. The point that she's making is that she owns the change, she's responsible, she's the Secretary of State. I think it was quite refreshing to hear at the dispatch box saying that she owned it. Sometimes people don't always take responsibility. So, but the point she made is absolutely clear. EU supremacy ends this year. A huge number of laws will be taken down that we no longer need. But the point is, those remaining, we want a bit more time just to pick through them, reform them, and actually make them better, rather than just having a sort of end-of-year cliff edge approach for everything.
OK, Hugh Merriman, really good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Well, still to come, we'll have the latest on the fallout over the government's EU laws U-turn. That's after the weather with Aidan McGibbon.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of trousers?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock, Friday the 12th of May. Today, the Prime Minister at loggerheads with his own party after U-turning on the government's pledge to scrap 4,000 EU laws still on the statute books. But rail workers aren't running out of steam as the strikes continue across the country. The Rail Minister Hugh Merriman told us the unions were at fault.
We have been able to facilitate an offer which has been put to the union leaders. The problem we've got is that they won't put it forward to their members.
The UK has supplied Ukraine with long-range Storm Shadow cruise missiles. But what are those weapons and what does this mean for the war? And the UK economy grew by 0.1% between January and March. That's according to the latest figures out this morning. However, the UK's GDP fell by 0.3% in March. It comes as the Bank of England raised interest rates for the 12th time in a row.
Don't forget, today's the last day to have your say in the Trick Awards this year. GB News Breakfast is up for Multi-Channel News Programme of the Year.
And our very own Stephen Dixon is nominated for Best News Presenter. So you can cast your vote by going up to the screen now, and you can put your phone up to that QR code there on the right, and it will take you to the website. Or you can just go to trick.org.uk, but do be quick because votes close at 5 p.m. today.
If you want to get multiple votes.
So,
Which
no
you're probably not
excuse.
allowed to do. You're not allowed to do that. Don't do that.
But do it.
Yeah, I'm Stephen Dixon. Good morning.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Having a little bit of Eurovision fun this morning.
Yes, we are.
Getting in the mood for it. I've just played the team.
I'm in the mood.
Yes, thank you. The Austrian song, Who the Hell is Edgar? Which is the first track that you'll hear on the final tomorrow night. It's just a great song. It's very Eurovision, very catchy.
It's going down very well in the office, isn't it?
Everyone's like, what a ridiculous song, and then you hear it and you're just like, actually, so it works.
And can I say that if they do really well tomorrow, you've really been ahead of the curve on this because you've been talking about this song for weeks.
True.
So we'll hold him to that, shall we? We'll have a discussion on Sunday morning.
But it is track number 1 tomorrow, which is not a good position to be in.
And we are the last one.
Which is a good position to be in.
Which is a good position because it's
because we can't vote for ourselves. So there you go. So you've got to think who you like to vote for, and you can't vote for the UK if you're in the UK.
So you have to vote for the banger, you know, the catchiest one.
The banger.
Lots of you getting in touch on our debate earlier about stay-at-home kids.
Ooh, yes.
Should kids stay at home and perhaps save up for that deposit, or should they get out and learn some life skills and be independent? Rob from Folkestone's been in touch. Good morning to you, Rob, saying some genuinely cannot afford to leave. Others realise that to pay a few quid a week for keep and having your laundry done is good crack. Could save lots for a deposit, but they would rather spend it on holidays.
You see, Debbie, I'm not trying to give you a down or anything. Debbie says, my son is 20. I don't want him ever to leave home. I still clean his bedroom. I wouldn't have it any other way.
See, lots of parents love it.
Yeah, but all I would say to you, Debbie, on that is you're not doing him any favours by keeping him at home.
Well, maybe he likes it as well. Leslie Ann.
Well, maybe he does, but, you know, in terms of his personal development, you've got to let go, haven't you?
Yeah, I think when the time comes, he will. But I think it's quite...
Yeah, but if Debbie doesn't want him ever to leave...
Yeah. Debbie might need to come round to that idea.
No, sorry, Debbie.
Leslie Ann has the same sort of situation. Says, I have my 26-year-old living with us. I do his washing, I pack his lunch and an evening meal when he comes in from work. Well, your son's very lucky. I've helped him buy cars and fuel whenever I can. I will support him as a child. Children aren't just for Christmas, they are for life.
Yeah, I don't know, I worry. Peter from Leeds says it's a throwback to post-war times when parents and married children often lived together through necessity.
Yeah.
Actually, that must have been a bit awkward, though.
Yeah, it must have been a bit awkward.
Wouldn't fancy that, would you?
Joe touches on that as well. She says, my 29-year-old and his pregnant wife have to leave their rented apartment but can't find anywhere new because 30 people are going for every flat. It's been impossible. Now they have nowhere to go, so they're coming in with me. They don't want to, but otherwise they'll be homeless. Rental properties are in a crisis.
Yeah, it depends where you are in the country. I think London. If you're in, where are they? They're in London, does it say?
Doesn't say.
But if it's London,
We'd love
it's
to
a
know.
nightmare, isn't it? Other parts of the country, not so bad. Maybe we all need to start moving to where there is property and jobs and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, maybe. And David says, unless you earn around 30k in the south, you can't afford to commute and live in a house.
Yeah, true.
There you go.
True. Keep your thoughts coming through. GBviews at gbnews.uk. And I know you've got views on this as well, because Kemi Badenoch has lashed out at Brexiteers after they accused the government of a massive U-turn on its promise to bin all EU law by the end of the year.
Well, Tory backbenchers are angry at the climb down over the so-called post-Brexit bonfire pledge, but the business secretary hit back, saying they're all talk, no action.
Let's talk to our political reporter, Olivia Utley, who joins us now. I mean, how much of a difficult position is Rishi Sunak in with this?
Well, he is in an awkward position because it's very important for Rishi Sunak politically to keep his Brexiteers on side, and they are very much not on side at the moment. John Redwood, who is a veteran of the party, a very vocal Brexiteer who has a lot of supporters in the party, has really hit out at Kemi Badenoch, saying that she doesn't want to materially change any of the EU law that's already in place. He claims that the 600 laws which the government is prepared to scrap, that's down from 4,000 when Rishi Sunak first made the promise, are all sort of immaterial. Well, Kemi Badenoch is hitting back pretty hard. She said that the Brexiteers in the party are sayers rather than doers, and when she asked them, as she claims, exactly what laws they would like to see changed, they were unable to come up with a meaningful answer. She also feels that she's the one taking the pragmatic route down the middle. She says that if Labour on the one side are criticising her and arch-Brexiteers on the other side are criticising her, well then, she's probably got it right. But politically, it is hugely important for Rishi Sunak to keep those Brexiteers on side. He is in quite a fragile position in his own party. Remember, he didn't win that leadership contest last year, Liz trusted. So he's got a sort of Jenga tower going of all of his different sort of supporters, and he has to keep them all on side. So how he's going to bring them over is going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, indeed. Olivia, thanks very much indeed. How you get rid of political opposition, I think, is to put workmen outside their office and get them to drill very loudly every time you want a conversation. Dear me.
Yeah, made it difficult, didn't it? Certainly did. Les from West Brom's been in touch on that story, saying 8 years the government have had to unpick these laws, yet here we still are ruled by them. Do you get the feeling that we haven't left and they haven't told us that yet?
Lots of people getting touched on the train strikes. ASLEF today, RMT tomorrow. Someone who hasn't sent their name, which is a shame, says both ASLEF and RMT are affiliated political movements. They're no longer unions looking after their members. Well, they would disagree most strongly with that. Peter, it says there's no point in a rail industry that doesn't run trains. Tarmac the whole thing and give us a brilliant road system, or let the new huge lorries use them. Yeah, I don't think that's going to wash.
No.
But, you know, I get your point. It does get very, very frustrating.
Yeah.
Rob from Huddersfield says, I'm fed up with the strikes. They should prioritise the service before wages. Overall, the service is terrible and unsafe. I don't know about unsafe. I've travelled to Leeds on numerous occasions, and each time it's absolutely crammed. Again, totally sympathise with you, Rob, but you wouldn't say that if you were working. You said prioritise the service over wages, but you wouldn't say that if you were working for it, would you? Because then you'd end up subsidising the service that you were working on, which, you know...
I know for a lot of people it's the cost of things as well. I mean, when trains are running, they cost an absolute fortune. I mean, it'd be £30, £40 sometimes for a 30-minute journey.
Well, it can be in some places.
It can be in some parts of the UK. And, you know, if you went to Europe, somewhere like France, you could do that sort of journey for €2-3. You
see, I've just got my mother-in-law train ticket, a return train ticket from up north down to where we are, which isn't as far south as London, but nevertheless. But that was about 60 quid for a return. No, you see, that's not bad.
See, the fact you say that's not bad, I think that's a lot of money.
Well, it is a lot of money, but it's not bad in that you'd spend that on petrol there and back.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
So...
But the idea should be, isn't it, that it's a lot cheaper than petrol?
Well, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
And then people would just want to use the trains, wouldn't they? But it's not an option because they're either not running or they're very, very expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, your mum, if you were booking for her on the day or the day before, you're probably looking at about 250 quid.
Oh, if you do, yeah. You've got to book in advance, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, you do, you do. Keep your views coming in on any of the stories that we're talking about today. We've heard from loads of you. I know that Clive from Stratford-upon-Avon has been struggling to vote for the Trick Awards. Apparently, the website seems to be having issues.
Keep
trying. It's crashing because so many people are voting for Stephen.
Oh, no.
Which is a great sign. So do keep trying, please. trick.org.uk. And we've got a QR code as well.
If you are voting, then thank you very much indeed. If you don't want to, well, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but voting closes at 5 p.m. today, so you haven't got long.
And people stop messaging me saying, can I vote for Ellie? No, she's not on the list.
I'm not on the list.
I don't know how you get on the list.
I don't know.
I don't know who decides that you go on the list.
I think you have to do it for a little bit longer than...
I don't know. You're a newbie.
I'm a newbie. Whereas you've been doing it a little while now, haven't you?
30 years.
Yeah.
30 years.
He deserves to be on that list.
I don't look old enough, do I?
He doesn't. He doesn't. As David Mellor said, what do you say about your hair? It looks even better close up. That's what he said. And it's true.
When I first started working in this business, David Mellor was in government.
Really?
And if I'd ever met him at that point, I never did, I would have been terrified. And now he's commenting on my hair.
Oh, and paying you lots of compliments.
This is what happens in the world. It's very, very odd. I once had a stand-up row with Michael Heseltine.
Did you? Why?
I went to interview him about something and he got very annoyed. Anyway, it's very nice every time I see him now on an interview. But yeah, isn't it funny how the world turns?
Oh, that's a good story, though.
Go. Yeah, Heseltine. I can't remember what he was.
It's a good story. It'd be good if you can remember what you were rowing about.
Yeah, Hezza. He's on a trip to Nottingham and wasn't happy with my questions. But anyway,
oh dear.
There you go. It was radio back in those days, so it was fine. So no one saw my embarrassment.
Oh, bless you. Good story, though, good story. Yeah. Keep your views coming in on anything, whether it's Heseltine stories or any of the other things we're talking about today. Maybe not. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
12 minutes past 9. Now, Russia has denied reports that Ukrainian forces broke through front lines, saying the military situation is under control. It comes after Russian military bloggers reported that Ukraine was making advances towards the city of Bakhmut, with some suggesting a counter-offensive by Ukrainian forces had started.
The UK economy grew by 0.1% between January and March of this year. The Office for National Statistics says although the economy grew in these months, GDP fell by 0.3% in March.
And as we've been saying, rail passengers facing disruption over the next few days because of more strikes. Members of the ASLEF union walking out today. RMT members striking tomorrow. That's the day of the Eurovision Song Contest. I'm sort of getting in the mood for Eurovision this year.
Yeah, I can tell. You're very, very across
I haven't decided if I'm going to stay up and watch it. That's the thing, because what time's it going to go on till? About 11 o'clock? Something like that?
I think you could do till about 9:30. We did the Coronation concert. What time was that?
Oh, that was 9:30 when I stopped watching
that was manageable.
So I didn't see the end of it. But you can't watch the Eurovision and then not see who wins, can you?
No, you wake up in the morning and you get told. I quite like doing that. It's like you go to bed with a cliffhanger.
So I might come to work on Sunday, half asleep.
Oh, yeah, if you commit to it.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it.
I don't know. If I have a good sleep in the afternoon, maybe I can wangle it.
Yeah. I think you can.
Could be fun.
Yeah, you don't drink. Treat that as your night out.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
There
That's
you
a
go.
good idea.
Bag of peanuts.
Exactly. Treat yourself.
Yeah.
It's the weekend.
There you go. If you want to win, apparently you've got to have a song about love.
Love. And you've got to have repetition of phrases or words, apparently, which is your one, Austria.
Yeah, but that isn't about love. It's not about relationships,
it's about
that one.
Edgar Allan Poe.
It's about Edgar Allan Poe. But yeah, apparently, according to the University of Winchester, 20 of the last winning songs have got repeating choruses, and 17 were about relationships. 13 actually talked about love. Love Shine a Light was our last winner, wasn't it?
Oh, that's very true. Yeah, I understand that. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone can relate to love and being in love, wherever you are in the world.
Even if you've never been in love, you can still want to be in love.
Exactly. So you can understand why. You haven't got long to grab them in the Eurovision audience. You've got 2 minutes. 2 minutes 30, is it?
And 3 minutes.
Oh, well, he knows everything.
Honestly.
3 minutes you've got to grab
3 minutes is the maximum amount of time you can have.
Well, there you go.
On a pop.
It's not a lot of time, so you can understand repetition and something everyone can all relate to, which is love.
It's just a bit of fun. Do you know, I just want to let our hair down. I want to support Liverpool, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I love Liverpool. It's a great place, and we're going to be live there this hour, actually. But I want to support Liverpool, so let's just get behind it for that, if nothing else.
And Ukraine as well.
Yeah, and Ukraine.
Yeah, that's quite nice as well. Now, the High Court phone hacking trial against Mirror Group newspapers brought by Prince Harry and other celebrities has entered its third day today.
Yeah, lawyers allege the publisher used illegal techniques to generate personal stories.
Well, let's go to the High Court now, where our reporter Paul Hawkins has been for the past few days. Paul, how's it going there, and what are we expecting today?
Yeah, so today, really, there's two people. One person has done most of the talking for the last 2.5 days. That's David Sherborne, the lawyer that represents the claimants. And the name that has kept coming up time and time again is Piers Morgan. So today, David Sherborne is going to finish it's 2.5 days of opening statement for the claimant's position. Then we're going to hear from the lawyers representing Mirror Group newspapers, their opening statements. The next week we'll hear from the witnesses, but essentially this case is about, was there obtaining illegal information? Was that taking place at Mirror Group newspapers? And if so, who knew about it? And were they trying to cover it up? Now, yesterday, we heard pretty much a lot more of what we heard the day before on the opening day of the trial. So David Sherborne saying that there was systematic and widespread use of private investigators by Mirror Group newspaper journalists, and he reeled off a number of names of senior executives, editors at the newspaper, including Piers Morgan, who he said, in his opinion, was right at the heart of this in many ways. He was a hands-on editor and was close to the board. We have the direct involvement of Mr. Morgan in a number of these incidents. Now, Mirror Group newspaper denies those claims, and of course we know Piers Morgan says that he knows nothing about phone hacking, was not involved in any phone hacking, but David Sherborne continued to use a number of examples, specifically a 1999 story about the Prince Michael of Kent, the cousin of the Queen. Now, Prince Michael's lawyers worked out that a blagger had called his bank to obtain private financial information. Now, subsequently, Mirror Group newspapers settled out of court. They published an apology and paid Prince Michael's legal costs. David Sherborne said it's inconceivable, given the way this progressed, that the legal department and Piers Morgan were not well aware of the source of the story and that it came from illegally obtained information. But as I say, Piers Morgan denies any claims of any involvement or knowledge of phone hacking. The case continues behind me. It's going to continue for another 6 to 7 weeks, and as I say, next week we'll hear from witnesses, and then Prince Harry will be in the dock in the first week of June, the first senior royal in modern times to be cross-examined in a witness box in a court.
Wow, that would be significant. OK, Paul, thank you so much for bringing us up to date.
We're going to be live at the Balmoral show in Belfast very shortly. See what's going on there with Doogie Beattie. This is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
She's been singing her own praises.
Not quite.
Well, no, not quite.
Singing the team's
the
praises.
team's praises.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a country show?
No.
Ah,
Have you?
yeah, well, I'm up north.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Which
they're
one?
great, actually. Well, there's a few up north.
Oh,
There's
yeah?
the Cartmel Show, and there's one at Hooker Hall and all that. They're great.
Well, they look great. They do look good.
They are great, actually. I mean, the sort of you have the farming types and all that thing, but you can get stuck in and get to do things from like sheep shearing, lots of cattle prizes, lots of food,
Yeah, I'd be on board.
home baking, a lot of food, just honestly. But anyway, that's all kicking off at the Balmoral Show. It's Northern Ireland's biggest agricultural event.
Yes, it runs until Saturday at Balmoral Park near Lisbon. And our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, is there for us now. Good morning, Dougie. How is it looking there?
Good morning to a beautifully sun-bathed Balmoral showgrounds. In fact, it's been playing havoc with our camera crew. Its sun is coming in and out. And today is the first day of the real serious equine competitions here. And I'm very lucky to have one of the main amateur competitors with me, Jennifer Kennedy and her horse.
Good morning. Good morning to you.
Well,
This is Sam.
Tell us a little bit about today.
Sure. Well, today we have the cobs, also the working hunter cobs.
Yeah.
All 3 weights of the show cobs are on this morning. So you start with the lightweights, followed by the heavyweights, followed by the maxis. And currently in the ring, there's the working hunter cobs, followed by all of the working hunter horses. So it's a pretty big day for us today.
Tell us a little bit about our very good friend here.
Certainly. Sam here, or Moneycross, I've had him for a year. He's quite young. He's still learning the trade. He has done very, very well already this year, so we're very hopeful. Obviously getting a bit excited, ready to go in the ring. But no, he's very sweet. He's rising 6, and he has done quite a bit. He really, really enjoys his job, and he's usually very easy to handle.
Yeah.
But obviously coming into the show day gets very exciting for them.
You've done quite well in the last couple of weeks. You were in Cavan.
We were at the Cavan in the Northern Ireland Festival, and he was champion cob. And then we were also at a show previous to that where he was champion cob as well. So we're hopeful, but you never know on the day. It is down to the judges. It's down to the, in the lap of the gods almost, you could say.
Well, there you go. Best of luck with him today.
Thank you very much.
And we will be watching. So there you go, Stephen. I know you like the baking and everything else that goes on at these shows, but this is definitely one for me. And you can see it from the animal. He is absolutely raring to go.
Beautiful stuff. Beautiful. Dougie, thanks very much indeed. Love all of that. And it's a step back into the past a little bit, because it's what people used to do. My grandmother won loads of stuff. They used to do like cross-stitch competitions and all that sort of thing at the country shows. But you're going back into the 20s.
Well, it's a celebration of all of those
1920s
things,
and all
isn't
that. Yeah, it's like proper home craft and jam. Have you made jam?
Also, no.
No.
Have you?
No.
My granny makes a lovely jam.
Does she?
She does, yeah. Half sugar, half fruit. Don't know if that's right, but it tastes great.
Yeah, about right.
Is it?
Yeah. Will she be watching?
She may be.
Send some, what's she called?
Dorothy.
Dorothy, send some down, Dorothy. Can't be eating a lot of it, it'll affect my blood sugars, but I'll give it a whirl.
She's very good. Yeah, she makes like a lot of scone. Yeah, she makes those as well.
Oh, does she?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we're losing all of those skills, Stephen.
Well,
Maybe we should be going to more country fairs.
I think we are losing a lot of those skills, and a bit of home baking. We got some of it back during the pandemic, didn't we? Because you had to do a bit more baking. Yeah. Everyone was making banana bread. But, you know, all the stuff you can do, we need to get back into that. It's quite nice, it's quite satisfying.
Yeah, it really is. Remember, today is the final day to vote for us in the Trick Awards, but by us, I mean GB News Breakfast. That's up for Best Multi-Channel Programme, right?
Yes, multiple news programme.
And there's a QR code. We don't have it with us right now, but you can scan that. Or you can go to the website, which is trick.org.uk. Our lovely Stephen, our very own Stephen Dixon, is up for Best News Presenter, and he really deserves it. And voting closes at 5 p.m, so please vote for him.
Well, it'd be very, if you do decide to vote...
He'd be very grateful.
Well, he'd be very, very kind of you.
But he won't ask because he's too humble. But he deserves it, and I think you agree with me. So let's get voting.
It's quite embarrassing. I'm quite embarrassed. But nevertheless, it's very, very nice to be nominated. So there you go. That's the main thing. We've got lots. What are we talking to? I'll tell you what. We're going to get the latest from Liam Halligan coming up in a few minutes. And Eurovision, of course, live in Liverpool.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts
Moss?
of rumors. Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning to you, 9:30. Loads of you getting in touch this morning. Just got to touch on this one from Liz. I'm totally in love with Stephen and Ellie.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very
Liz.
much indeed. However, not sure about Stephen's haircut. Prefer more hair on the sides, but still gorgeous. There's lots of hair on the sides. It's just because it's grey that it disappears
Look, point
a bit.
yourself to the side. Look, he has got some.
It has got some, though. It's just because it's grey.
And your hair looks lovely.
Thank you.
Even David Mellor said that.
Yeah, but there you go. So I just want to touch on that one. Anyway, should we get some showbiz news?
Let's.
Because I really fancy having a good old delve into the news with Stephanie Tetchy. Good morning.
Stephen and Ellie.
Good
Nice to see
morning.
you. Now, what have you got for us here? Because we all like a bit of Arnie.
We do like a bit of Arnie. He's back. But he's back on Netflix. So he's, you know, most of these celebrities, they always come out with their documentaries where you get to really get to know them and what they're about. And this is what this is about. It's called Arnold. It's a 3-part series, and he'll be talking about his life story from starting in Austria, where he was like a Mr. Universe, finding the limelight in Hollywood, and then obviously he was a Californian governor as well. But, you know, his career has been marred by controversy, i.e. he slept with his housemate and got her pregnant. So he talks about that, and that's all the end for his marriage to Maria Shriver, which caused a lot of pain. Yeah, it would be, but it didn't know. People didn't know for a very long time. It wasn't until his son was about 6 or 7 he actually realised he was the father. We've got a trailer here where he talks about the documentary.
I saw myself on that stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, Arnold Schwarzenegger!
Thousands of people screaming, Arnold, Arnold, Arnold. And when you visualize something very clearly, you believe that you 100% can get there.
It's funny. I tell you what, there's something about it. I don't know what it is about Arnie that you just sort of think he seems like a nice man.
He does. He's like one. You know, despite his appearances, where he looks like this big hunk, he's 75 and he still looks in really good shape. I think he's very quite placid and quite down to earth. So I think he was quite. You know, this whole controversy about this extramarital affair. It really did spoil his, you know, relationship with his wife. So he talks about it. So it'll be quite an interesting watch. It's out on June 7th, but we're going to be having little teasers before then.
And it does look from that trailer that a lot of the focus is going to be on his physical transformation and pumping a lot of iron by the looks of things.
You know, he learnt it all from me.
Oh, he did, of course. You know, original muscle.
Loving it.
Yeah.
There you go.
You know, when we think of Hollywood and we do think of muscle men, we do think of Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Terminator and all these classical films he's done. So I think it'll be a really good documentary.
It's fascinating how he's turned it from... In some respects, he's not what you call a great actor.
No.
In a way, but it sort of doesn't matter.
He's like that action man. He's like Bruce Willis in that league of, like, it's not about how they're acting, but it's just what they bring to the role and through their physique.
Well,
It'll be interesting to hear about the mental impact of that. And I mean, the discipline you must have to get into that kind of shape. I'm sure he's going to be touching upon that as well.
Definitely, and I think it's one of
You know all about that, darling.
He knows all about it. He knows all about it. It's the muscle man.
Oh, well, it sounds good. It sounds really good.
I'll watch that.
Looking forward to that. And happy news as well.
Well, sort of happy news.
Oh, it is happy news.
It's got a lot of tongues wagging about Robert De Niro this week, because he came out and he said that he welcomed his 7th child last month at the age of 79. So there's been a big chat whether 79's too old to have a baby.
It is.
Very cute baby.
It changes when you've got money, but he's now introduced her formally. Her name is Gia Virginia Chen De Niro. So he had her with his girlfriend, Tiffany. They met on set for his film Intern, but again, this week, a lot of people are saying, is it too old to become a dad?
Yeah, it is.
If he's got money, though, Stephen?
Yeah, but I think it's... Look, I mean, no offence to him, people do these things, and it's not a criticism of him in that sense, but he's wonderful, lovely little girl. He's not going to see her grow up, and she's not going to know her father.
Yeah, and I think that's
basically
what the talking point has been. People have said it's quite selfish to bring a baby into the world, even though you've got all that money. She's not going to have a long amount of time with her father, but we never know.
You never know.
He could live to about 100 and 110.
Well, he could do. He could do, but the chances are, if most people don't make it to 90.
Yeah.
So she's going to be what? She's going to be 10? Top one. And I just sort of think that, is that fair? I don't know.
I was interviewing John Caldwell last night, who's a businessman who welcomed his 7th child at 70 yesterday. And he said he could understand the criticism, but he was saying, there's people of the right age who are parents, but they still don't raise their children correctly.
No, that's true.
He said it's all about the values you can instill in your children, and obviously if you've got money, it goes...
Yeah, and the love you can give children as well. And you're right, I think money does go a long way.
Well,
a child will never want for anything.
No, and they'll have nannies and all the rest of it, won't they? Because it's not... I mean, look, I'm nearly 50. I wouldn't have the energy to bring up a baby now at 50.
I'm in my 30s and I'm starting to think about that as well.
Yeah.
But Robert said the baby was very much planned.
Well, good. 8 pounds, 6 ounces.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very cute. Big age gap with him and his girlfriend.
I know.
34
Ellie, I wonder
years.
what the appeal was for her.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro at 79. Obviously, all the money.
Wow.
It might be true love. Might be true love.
True love all the way to the bank.
Oh, you are a cynic, are you? You are a cynic.
I am.
We're going to be heading to Liverpool shortly.
Amazing, yeah.
Who's your money on for Eurovision?
Austria, Gustav. I thought he was really...
Oh, Belgium. That's Belgium.
Yes. Belgium, yes. I thought he was amazing last night. I thought he could actually get into the top 5. I think we're going to do pretty well, actually.
What's their song like, the Belgians?
Oh, it's really catchy.
Is it?
He's got, like, a good dancing...
Oh, it's a dance song.
Dance song, quite catchy. He had the crowds really going last night, so I think they'll do pretty well, Belgium.
Number 16 they are, so they're in the second half.
Middle of
so
the
that
pack.
could be all right.
I think whoever's in the second half is going to be in people's memory for quite longer. So if you start the show, I think, unless you do a really good performance, I think...
But we're last.
Ooh.
So that could be good for us.
Save the best till last.
Could be good
They
for us.
certainly do, Stephanie.
Yeah, OK, Stephanie,
Thank you very
much
much.
indeed. Now, with inflation soaring, as we know, it's slightly sort of coming down ever so slightly, isn't it? But, interest rates went up yesterday. Many are going to be wondering what is being done to help everyone with rising costs.
Well, the government is focused on cutting energy prices in the long run, with nuclear power high on the agenda. Well, economics and business editor Liam Halligan has been to Britain's newest nuclear plant at Hinkley Point to take a look.
Europe's biggest building site, Hinkley Point will be Britain's first new nuclear power plant for 3 decades. Already 6 years under construction, this mega project on the Somerset coast needs 1 million tonnes of nuclear-grade concrete and 230 tonnes of Welsh steel. Around 10,000 workers are employed here, with 60,000 more involved across the country. With the first of 2 nuclear reactors already delivered, this huge atomic power station is due to open in 2027. Hinkley Point will eventually provide enough power for 6 million homes, 9% of the UK's total electricity. The cost is about £26 billion. That's about half the annual defence budget. On a recent visit, Grant Shapps was keen to highlight that Hinkley Point is providing thousands of much-needed apprenticeships. I asked the Energy Secretary how building a nuclear power station fits into the government's net zero vision of green energy.
We have the world's largest offshore wind farm in the North Sea, and the second largest, and the third largest, and we're building the 4th. There are areas that we really lead in, but we need nuclear as well, because if the sun isn't shining, and you're not getting solar, and the wind isn't blowing, you're not getting wind, you need that base load of nuclear as well.
But is Shapps comfortable about the big cost overruns at Hinkley, or that it's being built by EDF, a French state-owned company, using billions of pounds provided by the Chinese government?
The Chinese have an investment which is historic in this particular development, but primarily, as you say, it's an EDF French and therefore French government, because they're now state-owned, and therefore French taxpayer problem.
Despite the boost to jobs in the local economy, some campaign groups oppose the construction of Hinkley Point. They say cost overruns will spark higher household energy bills, while highlighting the environmental costs of disposing of nuclear waste.
The highly radioactive nuclear waste from Hinkley C has to be stored on site in its highly radioactive state for 60 years. It's 60 years before they can move a gram of it to the geological disposal facility, which, you know, will somehow, somewhere be constructed in time for that.
Whether it opens in 2027 or later, this new nuclear plant will remain controversial. But as oil and gas use recedes, atomic energy will likely play an increasing role in powering our nation. Liam Halligan, GB News, at Hinkley Point.
Mike's been in touch. You know, I was saying earlier on, I bought my mother-in-law a train ticket.
Yeah. And it was £60.
60-odd quid. Mike says it is obvious Stephen has only bought his mother-in-law an economy, not a first-class train ticket. A disgrace.
Oh. Oh. What do you make of that, Stephen?
I think... I don't buy myself a first-class ticket when I go... So, there you go. Yes, economy is an economy ticket. There you go. We're also asking about space stuff, because there's a great space story about the biggest explosion, cosmic explosion scientists have ever seen has been discovered, and it's been... I'm not clear if it's been going on for 3 years or it lasted in total for 3 years, but brighter than a supernova. Quite where it is, I don't know. So it will have happened thousands upon thousands of years ago. Ginny says, Dear Stephen, I would love more astronomy news with expert comment, and I know I'm not alone. It staggers me that most news services don't consider cataclysmic universal events as being not interesting. They're not interesting enough. But they're huge. They're so important. Love it.
No, so important. We've also been talking about train strikes because there's one going on today from ASLEF. Virtually no train services in this country today. And then tomorrow we've got a train strike by the RMT, which is directly going to impact Eurovision, which is obviously taking place in Liverpool. I was about to say Southampton. Liverpool. Steve in Southampton, that's where I was getting to, says rail is the most expensive and least reliable form of travel, yet they continue to strike for more and more. Driverless trains are the way to go. Get rid of these opportunistic predators. They're not indispensable in spite of the fact they're being treated as such.
Now, interestingly, though, a lot of... I mean, talking to the minister earlier on, they say, well, you know, they need to put this to the members. And the members would accept that the unions aren't doing that. And ASLEF isn't doing that at the moment. Miguel, hi Miguel, is a member of ASLEF. And he says, as a train driver myself, can I just say that most, if not all, would accept a 4% backdated rise with 4% for 2023, which is what's been on the table as far as we understand it. The Rail Delivery Group are treating all the train companies the same when they are all different and operate many different terms and conditions which can't fit under one umbrella. This says the Rail Delivery Group are dragging the dispute out intentionally. Yeah, well, I mean, maybe, but Miguel would settle for that 8% over 2 years, which is what
really interesting.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, maybe that should have been put to the members. Then we'll have to see. But then it could be a case like we saw with the nurses, where it's put to the members. The unions actually recommended it to the members, and the members said, "No, I'm all right, thanks. We'll go back and negotiate a bit more."
Yeah.
So you don't know, do you? But keep those views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, the Eurovision Song Contest, as we were just saying, is going to be hosted in Liverpool tomorrow night after a competitive semi-final round.
Oh, yes, so it's all to play for now. 26 countries in the running, and our North West reporter, Sophie Reaper, is in Liverpool soaking up that Eurovision fever, which must be in Liverpool at boiling point now, Sophie.
It absolutely is. A very good morning to you both. Tomorrow night we'll see the semi-final, the final taking place here at the M&S Bank Arena in Liverpool. Now, it's 26 countries. It's absolutely ramping up here in Liverpool. There's events going on everywhere. And joining me now to tell me a little bit more about it is the very wonderful Pete Price.
Yes, get out the way. Hiya, gang. How are you? Hello, Stephen.
Hiya, Pete. How are you?
I'm very well, my friend. Welcome to Liverpool. The place is alive. You've never seen anything like it in your life. It's been full of the most amazing people from all around the world. I went to the semi-final the other night, and in 50 years of being in the industry, I've never seen a show put together like that. I just can't believe we have knocked it out the park. For Liverpool has just risen to the occasion, and it's just alive. And there's a place called Euro Club, and I went in and it was packed, and I thought, all these people, and they've come to see these obscure singers. No, they know every singer, every word, every song. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And what's beautiful is the place is full of love. There's no aggravation, or people are just so happy. Behind me is the Village, which opens at 12 o'clock. Tomorrow night, I'm working across the road when Graham Norton, and they're all doing the final, but the place is alive, you two. Get up here now on the train.
Would you if there wasn't a strike, Pete?
Yeah, we would if we could, but we can't. Pete, Liverpool is the city...
Do you want me to come down and get the train?
Yeah, well, come pick us up. Well, you can't get the train today. There's no trains running, but you could come pick us up if you like, and we can do it from Liverpool tomorrow. I think that's a great idea. But, Pete, Liverpool is the city of music, isn't it? Music and culture, that's what it's known for. How are Liverpudlians feeling about hosting this in their hometown?
They're very excited, and before you two were born, I was here when the Mersey Beat was first done, and Cilla Black was working in the cloakroom, and the Beatles were just being discovered, and we had Love Me Do. There couldn't have been a better choice to have the Eurovision than here. And the waterfront and the arena makes it so special. But Liverpudlians, you see, the wonderful thing about Liverpool is you can't come to Liverpool and be on your own. People will speak to you every single time. But you go down Matthew Street, and the statue of Cilla's got a smile on her face. Over there is the Beatles statue. They're moving. They're actually walking there. People are excited. I can't tell you about the atmosphere. We've embraced it. And Liverpool people are going, there's an awful lot of people in from different countries, aren't there? And they are.
Yeah, but that's such a lovely thing. I tell you what, Pete, it's why I think Liverpool is the best place for this year, and the way it's worked out is the fact that, because obviously we didn't win it, we shouldn't be the hosts, and the fact that we can, I think Liverpool will be a very gracious host city, won't it? Enjoying the glory, but also giving Ukraine everything it deserves.
Stephen, for the last 3 weeks here, we have never forgot Ukraine. Colin McEwen, who is a big filmmaker, has given 2 tickets to 2 Ukrainian people to go to the final. We embrace everywhere. The flag is everywhere. We will never forget why we have got it. Ever. And when you go into the arena, they give you a flag. We speak to everybody. It's magical, but we never, ever will forget. And we must stop this war. We must stop this war. And if we can do it through music, then Liverpool will be the forefront.
Oh, Pete, you've been really across this last few days in Liverpool. Final tomorrow, 26 countries. Who's the winner for you? Who do you think is the one to watch?
Ready? Cha,
yeah.
Cha, 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 cha. Cha. Cha, 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 cha.
Is that Austria? Edgar Allan Poe? That one?
Do you know, I don't know the names of, but do you know what I love? The guy was interviewed by a certain other television station, and it wasn't him, it was a lookalike, which made me roar with laughter. But everyone has embraced that song. I was surprised Ireland was thrown out, which I was really surprised about. Yeah. But England's got a good chance. Sweden's got a very good chance. But everybody is embracing cha-cha-cha, cha-cha, cha-cha-cha, cha.
Who's that then?
I don't know. I don't know which one that is, unless it's. I don't know. But anyway, it's not as good as.
It's the guy with the green thing and his chest showing.
Oh,
the green thing in his chest showing.
Finland. Oh, it's Finland. Thank you.
Finland.
She's done it. She's done a research. Come back in. Come back in and say hello. Come back in.
Come on.
She's done
Finland, number 13. Tomorrow.
I'm being brought back in.
So it's Finland then, Sophie. Is it this one? Who's the act there?
That's Finland who do cha-cha-cha, and but I agree with you, Stephen. I like Austria. Who the hell is Edgar? But I agree with you. I think they're going to struggle if they're the first act up. And I think it's been a little bit tactical, and we know now that the United Kingdom is the last act, don't we? I think that's a little bit tactical because we all know that they'll then be fresh in voters' memories.
But also,
but we don't want to win again, do we?
The war, you never know what's going to happen. No, but with the war, to make a statement, is it bigger than the song competition?
Well, well, it was last year. This is a point for you, Pete, because you'll know about this. Yep. I mean, as much as we love Eurovision because it's fun, we don't take it seriously whilst other countries do. But it is a political thing. You know which country's going to vote for which other country, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. But I've got to do across the road. 2 minutes walk from there, I'll be doing my own thing. We sold out 2 years ago, and I've got the campus outfit. Stephen, you won't believe what I'm wearing on tomorrow night.
I look forward to seeing it on Twitter. Blimey neck. So, Sophie, I mean, what I'm going to ask.
I'm doing the. Stephen, I'm doing the papers next week. I'll wear it then.
Oh, all right.
Great.
You've got a deal. You've got a deal. Sophie, what are your plans? Are you staying up there for the weekend?
Well, I don't live too far away, so I will be going home tonight, but we'll be covering the whole of today. We're actually attending the dress rehearsal, so I'll be able to tell you about that tomorrow morning. And then we'll be here from the crack of dawn tomorrow morning all the way through to about 2 a.m. on Sunday morning so that we can report on that winner for you as well.
Oh, fantastic.
So exciting.
Lovely stuff. Sophie, we'll see you tomorrow. Pete, we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful time.
Enjoy. Can't wait to see the outfits as well. It's one of the best bits.
Fabulous. Thanks, both.
Oh, brilliant. Nice to see them together, all cuddled up at the end. Very nice, isn't it?
I just sort of think, do you know what? There's always people who are very critical of things like Eurovision. You got to think of what Terry Wogan was like, who relentlessly took the mickey out of it, but... Nevertheless, so you've enjoyed it for the spectacle that it is. That we find it a bit of fun. It's a bit of a giggle. It's a bit outrageous.
It should be.
And it's a. Do you know what? It's a bit of fresh air, isn't it? And we need something to smile about and laugh about and talk about the next morning. I think that's just really nice.
And there was a view, which I now can't find because there's so many views, because you've been so fabulous at getting in touch with us this morning. I will find it. But it's basically saying something like, Eurovision is absolutely ludicrous and bonkers and it's got too crazy, but it won't stop me from watching it because I just love it so much.
Yeah, well, that's
essentially the view.
That's part of the fun.
That is part of the fun, exactly.
Oh, here we go. Sue from Stockport says, thanks so much for making me laugh once again. You are brilliant nutcases.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you. My memories of Eurovision, haven't watched for a while, but Sandy Shaw, Pop It on a String. Dana with All Kinds of Everything. She was on the show this week. She was on Breakfast this week.
Oh, she was.
And Bucks Fizz, Making Your Mind Up. Ah, yes. And forget the song and his name, but he was Irish. Well, that could be... There was quite a few Irish winners. There were about 7.
They're doing well, aren't they, the Irish? Not this year, though. They're out.
Yeah, they haven't
Didn't even make it to the final.
No, they haven't done for a while.
Exactly.
Which is a bit of a shame, I think.
Pop
It on a String. She never wore shoes, Sandy Shaw, did she?
Did she not?
No, she was barefoot, apparently.
Makes it interesting. A quick hello to Sean and Emma. They're normally in Dartmoor, but today they're watching us in gorgeous and sunny Gran Canaria.
Ooh.
They're streaming us live right now with coffee in the sunshine. They say, we love watching your show. Well, we love you tuning into our shows. Thank you very much.
We do. Yes, thank
Sean
you very,
and Emma.
very much indeed. Enjoy Gran Canaria. Enjoy the sunshine. How
jealous.
Nice. Very jealous. But we will be back tomorrow because it's welcome to the end. 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. We'll be here right through till 10. Esther and Phil are here next.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McKibben from the Met Office with your GB News forecast. It is a gloomy start out there for many of us, but brighter weather is on the way. If not today, then certainly in tomorrow. There'll be warm sunny spells developing. We've got low pressure retreating into the near continent. Higher pressure arriving from the northwest, and it's towards the northwest where we've got the sunniest skies. But an easterly airflow has brought a lot of low cloud in from the North Sea overnight, and where that low cloud is thickest, North Sea coast, for example, and over some of these eastern hills, some drizzle and some more prolonged rain and drizzle coming into East Anglia in the southeast by the afternoon. That's going to make it feel on the cold side with a brisk wind coming from the North Sea. Temperatures on the coast 10 to 13 Celsius. But further west, plenty of bright skies and warm sunny